we're going to start off with Rafael Jesus Gonzalez, Poet Laureate of Berkeley, and he will bring us together with an invocation in Espanol and English, followed by a poem.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chief. Because of the dark times in which we live, it is very important for us to center ourselves and to come together in our consciousness. And because, porque en estos tiempos oscuros es preciso que nos centremos en la conciencia. Y que para nosotros, nuestros antepasados nahuas, el hablar en público era acto sagrado. Invocaban lo divino, que fuera testigo de la verdad, del error. And in this dark times in which we have to center ourselves in consciousness, and because for our Nahua forebears of the Central Plateau of Mexico, to speak in public was a sacred act, they invoked the divine to witness the truth and the error of what we may say. Así es que, con permiso del pueblo Ohlone, primeros en habitar esta tierra, en la tradición indígena de las Américas, invocamos los sagrados rumbos. So with the permission of the Ohlone people, first to inhabit this land, in the indigenous tradition of the Americas, we invoke the sacred directions. Invocamos el este, rumbo de la sabiduría, cuyo nahual es el águila. We invoke the east, direction of wisdom, whose spirit keeper is the eagle. Blessed be. Invocamos el sur, rumbo de la mar, cuyo nahual es el coyote. We invoke the south, the direction of loving, whose spirit keeper. Invocamos el oeste, rumbo de la fuerza, cuyo nahual es el oso. And we invoke the west, direction of strength, whose spirit keeper is the bear. And we invoke the north. Invocamos el norte, la dirección, el rumbo del sanar, cuyo nahual es el bisonte blanco. And we invoke the north, direction of healing, whose spirit keeper is white buffalo. Invocamos lo alto, lo más vasto de la imaginación, donde hemos colocado todos los dioses, las diosas que hemos imaginado. We invoke the above, vaster than the imagination, which we have made the abode of the gods and goddesses we have imagined. And we invoke the below, y invocamos lo abajo, la madre tierra, de donde viene la vida. La madre tierra que hemos dañado con nuestra necedad. La madre tierra que nos sostiene y a quien ultimadamente vamos. And we invoke the below, the earth mother from whom comes life. We have harmed and abused with our foolishness and our false values. May she bear her patience a while longer, that we may heal ourselves and heal her. Invocamos el centro, donde se arraiga el árbol de la vida, que une los elementos sagrados, aire, fuego, agua, tierra, para formar la vida. Nosotros humanos, de cabeza grande, y nuestros hermanos y hermanas, los otros animales. Nuestros hermanos, hermanas, las plantas y los minerales. Hermanos y hermanas de toda la tierra. Todos, todos venimos de la tierra. No olvidemos esto. Si no, arriesgamos nuestra extinción. Ometeo. We invoke the center where the tree of life stands, which unites the sacred elements of air, fire, water, earth to form life. Us humans, two-legged and big-headed, and our brothers and sisters, the other animals. Our brothers and sisters, the plants. Our brothers and sisters, the animals. This kinship, this brotherhood, sisterhood of all of us and our relations upon this earth, we must never, never forget nor blaspheme, else we court our own extinction. Blessed be. So having invoked the directions and centered ourselves, I share with you a poem written for this times. Virus coronado, caballo pálido, pálido jinete, de las alunaciones del trastornado Juan, galopa por las calles desiertas. Aislados en nuestras casas, espiamos por detrás de las persianas, temerosos de que aún el polvito de sol nos pueda contagiar. Acabados los besos y los abrazos, y aún el tomarnos de la mano, corre la peste por el mundo entero. Derribará lo que sea preciso derribar y derribará mucho de lo que no, de lo que quede. Hagamos un mundo mejor. The crowned virus. Pale horse, pale rider, from the hallucinations of Mad John, gallop through the deserted streets. Sequestered in our houses, we peer from behind the shutters, fearful that even the sun motes could infect us. Gone are the kisses and the hugs, and even the shaking of hands. The plague runs through the world. It will destroy what needs to be destroyed, and will destroy much of what does not. From what will remain, let us make a better world. And that's our task, to make a better world that accords with the earth and her needs and her ability to sustain life. Blessed be.
Thank you, Raphael. Next will be Kim Shuck.
As long as we're invoking things, there's an old Aniuya story about when disease was invented, that we had, as humans, been bad to the animals, and they invented disease. And two of the plants did rituals for 4 days straight so that we could have cures for disease. And those two plants, as far as the Aniuya were concerned, were the pine tree and the sunflower. And it's worth thanking them. This is Quarantine Poem 24, unrelated to the pine tree and the sunflower. Write out your heart longhand, as if you were tying your ship to the dock in home port. Write out your concerns for those on the street, those they are gathering, for those targeted in this time of pandemic, as some group always is. Let the small joys expand. Let them heal you, because we need both empathy and care. Let us, in these hills, call one to another, one to another. Are you well? Stay well. You are loved.
Thank you, Kim. Hi, Shri.
Hi, thanks for having me. I just actually, when I signed up to join this, I didn't know what the weeks would hold, but I've been in. I'm actually in Navajo Nation right now, and I've been working. There's a surge here, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm a doctor at UCSF and was taking care of COVID patients in most of March, but it wasn't that busy in Navajo, in San Francisco. And, we did a great job flattening the curve. And then we've been working in Navajo Nation for the last 5 years with a program called HEAL. So we work across Arizona and New Mexico and Navajo Nations, like this is 27,000 miles. And our partners just kept saying, we need nurses, we need critical care nurses, we need emergency room nurses. And so just advocated with UCSF, and they got on board, to somewhat of a surprise, but it was, they started learning about the health inequity here. And so I've been here for now, I think 11 or 12 days. And two of the things I'm doing, and partly I'm telling you this because I haven't written that much because it's been so busy. There's a surge here, and there's a lockdown in New Mexico, and there's a lockdown in Chinle, where I am in Arizona on the reservation. And so I've probably seen, so the first few days I was seeing patients in a motel. So there's 125 unsheltered patients that have been kind of quarantined in a motel, and we wear our PPE, and essentially every day there's probably a couple times we got to call emergency to like take them to the main hospital. And so we're trying to take care of them so they don't get any sicker, and then also keep them in a motel so that they're not infecting the community. And it's this interesting, you want to hear their stories, and all of these, like the last two speakers, like every Navajo patient has this long arc of history, and a lot of injustice and trauma, and you want to understand that. And at the same time, you're on a balcony outside a motel, and your PPE is blowing in the wind, and you're trying not to infect that, because they're not all COVID positive in the motel, so not infect the next patient or infect yourselves. And so, and you're wearing like full PPE. So it's this balance of trying to learn and understand and open into somebody's life. And they're definitely isolated and lonely, and they're there like 24 hours a day, and you're trying to make sure you keep safe. And then the last 2 days I've been on the inpatient service, and then I'll get to my poem. Probably seen like easily more COVID patients in the last 2 days than I've ever saw in San Francisco. And a lot of this last week in Chinle, there was 4 generations of a family in the hospital: the great grandmother, the grandmother, the daughter, and the granddaughter. And it's really like this expansive definition of family and community, as well as obviously a lot of other things that put this community at risk. So this poem is it's about some of my time in the Bay working in the hospital, and it's called Going into the Hospital, COVID-19. When I walk out the door these days for a shift in the hospital, 2 small people cry at the door. my daughter and son, 4 and 1.5, tears big drops against their full brown cheeks. My first inclination is to dismiss their dramatic, "I will be back soon." They are on the other side of the door, and I am on the other, and they would much rather be on the same side of the door, rumpling through the leaves on the Oakland sidewalk, or taking a long walk around the neighborhood to visit a Japanese oak or a fennel bush, or a neighbor who might unexpectedly peek out their window. It is their immediate acknowledgement that they would rather be with their father, wherever he may be going, and whatever that might bring. When I head into the hospital, I'm aware that any missteps of face to mouth, or by poor luck or chance, could pull me away from seeing my 2 lovelies grow up. I can picture myself as one of my patients, trying to catch their breath like trying to catch a bus that's too far ahead, breathing like you've sprinted a mile and another mile, and your breath won't slow. The fear that creeps in. And isn't that how it's always been? Life as fragile as a leaf hanging on a tall tree, about to tumble to earth in autumn. And to be apart may be apart longer than anyone may have predicted. And to be apart now may cost us our lives. What I am learning from my 2 little ones, to give in to the jubilant joy of being with the ones we love, and mourning when they are not near. What could be more honest or more important, my loves?
Thank you so much, Shri. I'm so glad you were able to join us. And I want to thank Faith Adiele for having introduced you to me in the first place. Thank you. Next is Raluca Ioane.
Thank you for being here and for organizing this, Shiz. It's really special to be all together in this time. As some of you know, I was a Bay Area healthcare provider in Fruitvale at La Clinica, and I have now moved to Asheville, North Carolina. And this is just a little something about how it's been here and what's been going on. And thank you to Shiz for getting me to write this stuff down. 6 weeks ago, fresh from a cross-country move, I leaped energetically into a new job and straight into the COVID-19 crisis, happy to be needed somewhere. Every workday, I get up at 6:30 a.m. and drive out to Hendersonville, a rural community 20 miles outside of my new home city of Asheville, North Carolina. I'm not in Oakland, California anymore, and there is so much to learn here about Southern Appalachian history and culture, about Southern manners and new diseases like Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and the health challenges of migrant farm workers. At work, I meticulously change into clean scrubs, grab my N95 respirator mask and the homemade cloth mask that my friend Rachel made to wear over the respirator. When sick patients come, they wait in their cars in the clinic's parking lot. We screen them by phone or video call, and if they meet the stringent COVID-19 testing criteria, I don a paper gown, gloves, masks, plastic face shield, and go see them through their car windows. I hand patients a sheaf of papers, including the CDC home isolation guidelines and what to do if you get sicker. And then I poke a nasopharyngeal swab deep into their nostrils and send off the carefully labeled specimens. This no-touch approach to caring for patients feels invasive and distant at the same time, and runs counter to everything I know about being a good nurse and nurse practitioner. I have no answers or reassurances for patients. There is no treatment or cure I can offer. Sometimes, because the lab is so overwhelmed, COVID-19 tests take 7 to 10 days to get back. And we're asking everyone to wear masks and self-isolate until we know for sure that they're negative. At first, the threat of the pandemic seemed low, and the total cases in our county were low. And at first, not one of the hundreds of COVID-19 tests we sent out was positive. We have protective equipment more than other places in the country, and that feels like a luxury. But as the clinic's first positive tests started coming back for patients I had cared for, the pandemic became more real, as did the possibility of becoming a carrier of this virus. Every time I come in from doing a COVID-19 test in the parking lot and peel off the thin, easily torn, permeable paper yellow gown and the same N95 mask I've been reusing for days, I wonder if this protection is enough to stop the virus from seeping into my skin. There aren't enough tests to know who has the virus and who doesn't, and I'm afraid of the day the PPE fails and I become radioactive, unknowingly infecting more patients, coworkers, family members, and neighbors. It's an unprecedented time in our lives of forced distance, isolation, and economic shutdown. Wise leadership is sorely lacking, and our foolish president rants and raves while the nation teeters on the brink of an economic collapse that will bring us to our knees. I worry for the folks who are already living at the margins. This virus has further unmasked the hypocrisy and dysfunction of our nation, shown us for the country we really are, incapable of caring for its most vulnerable citizens or protecting essential workers who provide us with food and keep us alive. Last week, I went with a team of colleagues to a tomato packing plant where there have been some COVID-19 cases. We set up a mobile clinic with a tent inside the packing plant and tested 220 workers. For my colleagues on the outreach team, it was just another day on the job. I think they've had lots of experiences going to farms and factories and providing care and resources to those in need. But for me, it was a real eye-opener. I had no idea how deep in my gut it would hit me to spend a day inside a factory tending to the needs of assembly line workers. There was a layer of ignorance I had long held about where our food comes from and all the hands that labor to bring fresh food to my table. The workers at Flavor One, also known as La Tomatera, handle thousands of pounds of tomatoes shipped from Florida and pack the individual tomatoes in plastic packages and then stack them into cardboard boxes and load them onto trucks that crisscross the country to markets where consumers cringe at the prices and want cheaper, fresher produce. The tomato packing plant is just one of many places in town where low-wage workers who toil to make the essentials of our lives are bearing the brunt of the virus. The rest of the cases are in elder care facilities, nursing homes, and meat packing plants. My job for the day at the tomato packing plant was to physically examine each person who had symptoms of COVID and anyone with abnormal vital signs and determine who had to be pulled off the assembly line and sent out on a 14-day quarantine. The tension between a worker's ability to keep earning and their health is a frequent paradox in caring for low-wage and undocumented workers who do not have the luxury of paid sick leave or the ability to file for unemployment. The workers I examined looked at me with so much fear in their eyes. They asked questions I could not answer. Do you think I have the virus? How will I support my family if I am off work? What will happen to me if I get sick? How can I protect my babies? I am not a hero. I do not have the answers, and I do not have a treatment or cure for this virus. What I can offer is my presence, my willingness to be here in this with my patients. But how do you apologize for not being enough?
Thank you, Raluca. Thank you for taking the time to write this. Next up is Susana Praver Perez.
Hi, hi Raluca, it's good to see you. Raluca and I work together at La Clinica, and I'm still there. I'm missing Raluca. And Raluca, you'll see what the clinic's doing right now. Like Shri, I found it was very hard to write in the beginning of this. So much time went into preparing the clinic for the new environment. And not that we have so many cases. We don't really have that many cases. Like Shri said, we've done a very good job at flattening the curve, but it takes a lot of work just to try to keep people safe. And I didn't write for a while, and I was feeling really down, and someone pointed out to me that that was probably why. So this is about losing oneself in the work. And this is called Stuck in the Time of COVID. My muse must be in quarantine. She isn't on the corner where she often thumbs a ride. She's not among the wrinkled tarps where the homeless hide. The plaza's almost empty. Masked men scrub the concrete clean. Unmasked chauffeurs chat between daily ghost bus runs. Even the corner boys selling remedies to make the boredom hum are gone. And then there's me, wrapped in a lab coat, padded shoulders, making me look the superhero I'm supposed to be. But I don't feel super, just sober. Not hero, just over, just missing my muse. I breathe in scents of fractured verse, can't grab them with my latex fists. Shake shards of poems from folds of my mask, watch them melt in soapy hands. My refuge has been shelter. My refuge has been slumber. In bed at 8 p.m., patient stories replay in my mind again and again. Sandrita, just tortillas between her poking ribs. Marta, slicing paychecks to nourish those with less. Deidre, drunk with desire, breaking all the rules. ¿Cómo estás? Is filled with nuance. ¿Cómo estoy? An existential flood. I want to shelter in place, but an oath keeps my footsteps echoing off shuttered shops. I want to be of use, but I am losing myself in a gaping wound of uncertainty. I need shelter of metaphor and simile. I scroll social feeds for my absent muse, hunt poems as salves for stress-stripped nerves, searching for the medicine I can't seem to find on sanitized clinic shelves. And my muse came back. I'm feeling better, but unfortunately, not everyone is having as easy a time of it. This next poem is dedicated to Dr. Lorena Bren, the New York City emergency room doctor who took her life last week. This is called The Cobbler Has No Shoes. How does it feel to blaze unmapped trails in bare feet, just a stethoscope as compass? How do you bear the weight of being the final say, life or death in the balance, praying you get it right? Hands you cannot hold, grasp at life, violent coughs, fevered delirium. Doctora, ayúdame. I need air, echoes in ICUs and restless sleep. No way to turn off the volume. Placing breathing tubes in the morning, toe tags at night. Some nightmares don't dispel at dawn. What thoughts scream before scalpels slice skin with precision, bleeding from years of cutting out a body's ills? What final thought before crimson flowed across white sheets? Who was there to hold and heal the healer? Who placed the toe tag on the doctor's unshod feet? And to not leave you on a down note, I'm gonna just do a short last poem, which is about resilience and about the way we in the literary community have adapted to this new world. We're not only surviving, in many ways we're thriving. And as Sishu was saying, we're with people from all over the world now. And this is called Reborn in the New Normal. I stay alone, live on the phone, on Facebook and IG. I sport a mask, 6 feet, my ass don't want no one near me. I'm making love to the stars above. I got moonbeams on my sheets. In the morning light, I'm feeling tight. I got music in my feet. I dance Zumba on the airwaves. Zoom readings spin my head. And that hot MC looking straight at me is half naked in his bed. Who needs TV when you've got Tony Aldarondo in your ears? His Latinos rhyme gets me high like a keg of Corona beer. Daniel, brilliant playwright. His new play moved to Zoom. Half a dozen actors rehearse in separate rooms. Norm calls me from Manhattan. He lives in COVID hell. Walks around in a sharkskin mask in style and staying well. Sandra's in Borinquen, escaping COVID's reach. She broadcasts La Lunada from Arecibo's beach. Shizwe's doing workshops. Josiah's living bold. A whole new world is being born. There's no time for feeling old. Thank you. Stay safe, stay creative.
Thank you, Susanna. And next is Sue Rancella.
I teach third grade in a public school and in the Bay Area, and I'm going to read two chunks. The first one is an email I wrote back to Shizue immediately after she asked me if I could read today, because I said no. And then the second one is something I posted on Facebook a few days ago. I've been teaching since the first day of closure. With no advance warning, we were told to make work packets to keep the kids busy for the first 3 weeks. But those weeks were hellish attempts to reach out and make contact with all of the families and kids. It took me 6 hours that first weekend to get current contact info for every family. I can't even estimate how many phone calls, texts, and ill-fated emails it took in order to gather it all. Only 2 kids in my low-income class had devices at home other than a parent's phone, so our district did a massive push to get Chromebooks to all the kids who couldn't get online. I can't even tell you what it's been like to do all the tech troubleshooting, making videos of my own screen to teach parents how to teach their kids to log on to Google and all the learning sites. I sent long emails to the parents in 2 languages. I had no time to do more than 2 languages. Every single morning for the first 3 weeks. I can't count the number of emails, phone calls, texts I got back telling me of problems their kids were having just connecting. Thinking of things to have the kids do is the easy part. The hard part is building the pathway between me and them. I keep telling it's ordered me to make say, oh, that's easy. But then they say, oops, sorry, you can't use your hands and you can only use 1 foot. That's what it's been like. I've been trying to make oatmeal with 1 foot. I started today at 8:50. I stopped once to pee and I ate lunch in 20 minutes. Other than that, I haven't even stood up or checked my email. And I barely made a dent in my lengthy to-do list. I'm fighting tears of tension over the pressure to get so much done that I don't even know how to do. The learning curve is huge, and I keep seeing the faces of my students in front of me and reading the lonely words that they write to me on my Google Classroom page. It's hard to know that I'm working as hard as I can, and the results are so far below what they deserve, need, and want, but that's all I can do. And then this second chunk is what I wrote 2 or 3 days ago on Facebook. When Crisis School first started, I kept envisioning a broad chasm, me on one side, the kids on the other, and they were so far away that I couldn't see them at all. After I spent 6 hours that first weekend to get accurate contact info, I started emailing parents, begging them to tell their children that I would be communicating with them through Google Classroom. I didn't know if they would even remember how to get in. I'll never forget that first sign of contact. I had placed a link on Google Classroom where kids could make a little video of themselves. I kept logging in, refresh, refresh. And when that first kid's face popped up, proof that he had found us and had made a video message for us, I cried. Now in week 6, I've had 2 decent teaching days in a row. Decent, not great. A good day of crisis learning, for me, bears little resemblance to what I would have called a good day before. But the tiny things that make it good now are as sparkly and bright as any moment I've had in my 31 years of teaching. I'm stretching out across the chasm, and the kids stretch back from their side. Sometimes our fingertips touch. I still feel guilty that I'm getting paid for what often feels like pure shit. I still have multiple episodes of tangled technology every single day. Yesterday, one group meeting was so frustrating that the second I clicked end meeting, I hollered, fuck, in my kitchen, and then panicked at the thought that maybe I hadn't really disconnected from all those 8- and 9-year-old ears. But still, I can now see some tiny little jewels. Here are a few. When I called a very reluctant writer to tell him what a good job he had done on his writing, I asked if he had been able to find the feedback that I sent before he revised his piece. He exclaimed, "Yes, that helped me a lot." I've told the kids that anyone who gets 50,000 points will get a fancy medal that I bought and had engraved. One hardworking kid texted me, devastated that he had screwed up his tracking sheet. When I fixed it and told him that his 36,000 points were still there, he cried out, "Yes!" There was excitement in his voice. After 2 horrendous days of technology last week, 18 kids showed up for our video meet today. They hadn't given up after all. These are not big, but they're something. They are little markers of hope. We need to celebrate all of them. We are doing this. That in itself is downright remarkable. We are doing this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue, for making the time to come on. I think it was really important to hear from some of you who are working so hard. So thank you so much. So next up will be Nicole Anetis, who is also a teacher.
So I had prepared to read something, but things happen and change rapidly. So I'm going to type in a link here in the chat, and this is called Masks for All California, which is something that one of my students founded. She's a junior at Lowell High School, and she founded this organization all on her own. Shizwe read an email that I shared with her that the student had written to me, and Shizwe wanted her to come and read today, but she can't because she's standing in front of the Bayview Library giving out masks to people in the community that need them. This is so important, especially from youth. I have many students who are essential workers who are now supporting their families. I have many students who cannot work because they are not of age to work, but are the ones who are going to the grocery stores for their families because their families are immune compromised. The students who are essential workers oftentimes only have paper masks that they recycle. There are not enough cloth masks in the community. I was noticing that a friend of mine who does street outreach for United Playas, who works with youth, was using paper masks because he did a video. His name is Will Ramirez, and so some of you know him. And I was looking at his video and I realized, oh my gosh, the people who are doing street outreach do not have cloth masks. Another friend of mine who works doing street outreach with the people who need it the most says that there are not enough cloth masks to go around. When we think about how this affects the youth, it is chilling. So the student who created this organization, she's in my Epic and Myth class, and we've been looking at all of the myths not through the lens of the hero's journey, but the heroine's journey, which begins with the illusion of the perfect world and ends with a radical acceptance of that illusory perfect world, that it doesn't exist, and the wholeness that the hero needs to find in order to through that. So it's ironic, or not so ironic, that she tied in her efforts to the heroine's journey and says, yes, this is the call. And she's created this organization. She's going to be at different library branches every Sunday giving out masks. Please, if you know how to make masks, if you are able, the youth who are doing this appreciate any and all support. The people who are doing street outreach, United Playas, Tiny is also in the house. She does street outreach. Urban Alchemy, all St. James Infirmary, the Homeless Youth Alliance, they need cloth masks. The student who created this organization, she's helping those agencies. So everybody, like, we need the masks. So this is not at all what I had prepared to write. I was going to write about, what it is as a teacher. I was out of sick days in March already because I thought I was sick and I couldn't get testing, but whatever. People have lost their jobs, people are struggling, and this is impacting all of us. So I could go on about it, but that's not as urgent as I think the call for getting masks out to the community. That's not as, whatever I have to say about teaching is not as important as this subject. So that's what I have to say. Thank you so much for having me here, Shizwe.
Thank
And
you.
again, I'll type in the link if you guys want to see it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And you know, one of the things that I loved about what she wrote was, and by the way, Nicole teaches at a top public academic high school. So these students that are in need and that are working to help support their families, etc., this is in a top school, public school in the city, where we tend to think that all the students are privileged and so forth. And one of the things that, I mean, and they are really bright students that work really hard academically at this school. And one of the things that I was struck by about Nicole's students' piece was how much praise she had for Nicole for bringing fun and social relevance.
That's all the kids. Kids will listen to what they want to listen to. That's all the kids. Don't, no.
Okay, stop for a minute. I'm going to mute you. Somebody mute her because she needs to not be modest about this. Anyway, I mean, teachers are so important. I remember when I was a kid and I got pretty suicidal in senior year of high school. And if it wasn't for the teachers that I had who opened my mind to the world, you know, I would not be the person I am now. And what the students said was that she was, you know, very good at doing the work, but she was bored with it. And COVID has given her a purpose that she could not see in her schoolwork. So, but I think that Nicole was one of the people who brought to her the sense that a possibility that if you're not happy with the way things are, that you personally could do something. And that's a really powerful gift. So I want to thank you for that. Okay, so next up is Sandra Bass.
Thank you so much, Josue. It's such a privilege to be here. This has been amazing. I'm suffering with a fractured molar, so as I read, it sometimes spikes a little bit with pain. I might slur a little bit, so my apologies. And I may have to leave a little bit early, but I'll try to hang in there as long as I can. The title of my pieces will be carried forward upon the whispers of our elders, and it begins with a quote. Dearly beloved, we have gathered here today to get through this thing called life. Prince. One evening in early March, before we all were sent home to shelter, I got a call from my mother. She told me that her cousin and her cousin's husband had been rushed to the hospital. Both were diagnosed with pneumonia. Shortly after entering the hospital, my mother's cousin died. She was 88. Her husband spent weeks linked to life by a ventilator. Tests later revealed that they were both positive for the coronavirus. When my grandmothers died, family members spent hours by their bedsides, soothing them as best we could as they transitioned beyond the veil. Death by an infectious disease, however, is an exceptionally lonely experience. No one was allowed to be close to our kin, to hold her hand, gently knead aching muscles, or express words of love that may have been deeply felt but perhaps never shared. In her final hours, she did speak to a family member by phone. Her last words, spoken between labored and fragile breaths, were, "Remember me." Traveling upon the misty vapors of our exhalations, this tiny crowned conqueror has wound its way across the globe, devastating families, cities, even countries in its path. Along its journey, it unveiled truths about our current state that are breathtaking in both their beauty and brutality. The sounds of sheltered Italians singing together from their homes in the medieval town of Siena reminded us that our desire to connect transcends our ability to share physical space. And then there were the calls that came from pundits and elected politicians to sacrifice our elders on the altars of the American way of life. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of Texas framed this fatal bargain as such. No one reached out to me as a senior citizen to ask, are you willing to take a chance on your survival in exchange for keeping the America that all Americans love for your children and grandchildren? And if that's the exchange, I'm all in. The lieutenant governor's notion that some lives are expendable to save our way of life, and his odd arrogance in thinking that he should have been consulted about whether millions should live or die, did not emerge anew during our present crisis. In fact, this callous logic, what veteran freedom fighter Ruby Sales has called empire consciousness, lies within the very foundations of the America Lieutenant Governor Patrick believes we are all so eager to preserve. Empire consciousness prizes domination for the chosen few above all else. It thrives by seeking to snuff out genuine human connection, our collective narratives, historical memory, and embodied spirituality, and to supplant these qualities with a social order that deifies the constructs of whiteness and wealth concentrated at the very top. The self-destructive and dehumanizing contradictions of empire consciousness are embedded in the very birthing of America. For was it not slave-owning patriot Patrick Henry who emphatically declared, "Give me liberty or give me death," even as he denied dozens of enslaved human beings their liberty? Like many politicians of his day and ours, Patrick Henry betrayed his deepest values to preserve the reigning economic order. Even though he was a vocal opponent of slavery for years after the Revolution, he did not free one single slave throughout his lifetime or even upon his death, as he could not fathom, he would say, the general inconvenience of living here without them. Despite all efforts to conveniently erase the humanity of enslaved Africans, however, the empire consciousness enterprise failed completely in this regard. While the unspoken aim of empire consciousness is to crush the souls of the oppressed and oppressors alike, the souls of Patrick Henry and his brethren are surely fractured by their choices. Enslaved Africans and their descendants were liberatory geniuses in finding a way out of no way, as the old adage goes. Across the span of centuries, they found a way to keep the internal fire of future liberation aflame, even when there was no evidence that freedom would ever come. The dream of freedom while suffering under the lash and the lust of slave owners requires a level of consciousness about your worth and the worth of your people that runs counter to everything empire consciousness holds dear. This consciousness rejects the notion that certain lives are expendable in order to preserve the general inconvenience of the privileged few. In defiance against the hopelessness systems of oppression cultivate to maintain command and control, those operating from this plane of consciousness understood that our liberation was not bound to a body or dependent upon the graces of a totalitarian power. Freed from the constraints of time, place, and corporeal reality, the potential for mountaintop consciousness, as Ruby Sales calls it, can be discovered within each individual spirit. It is activated when grounded in something larger than ourselves, gains strength when we gather together as fellow travelers, triumphs when we act collectively and courageously, and is carried through the ages upon the whispered wisdom of our elders. By bearing witness and sharing legacies, through their devotion and their admonitions, and even in the lessons learned from witnessing the travails of unmoored lives, our elders bring forth the wisdoms that have sustained us. And at their best, their lives stand as a testament to the evolution of our human journey and inspire future generations to grow beyond what even they could imagine. This call to sacrifice the elders is not noble, as Lieutenant Governor Patrick suggests. It is not just a heartless disregard for the lives of those who are no longer seen as worthy contenders in the fictive race for the survival of the fittest. It is an age-old tactic that has been used throughout American history to hobble our future liberatory possibilities by attempting to destroy our kinship with the past. It failed then, and it will fail now, if we stand united against the destructive empire narrative and have the courage to birth something new. It is ironic that an illness that takes our lives by stealing our breaths also invites us to consider what needs to be breathed into life in our time. For some of us, the experience of sheltering has been frightening. For others, it has seemed like endless solitude or a time of reflection and reconnection. Wherever this moment finds us, the possibility of reimagining new ways of being with and for each other lies there as well. And so, dearly beloveds, we are gathered here today in this precious, pregnant pause to figure out what we need to do and who we need to be to get through this earthly experience, this marathon riddled with melodies and melodies, joys and pains, this thing called life. After the ill winds of illness have ceased to blow, will we choose to ventilate our world with justice and compassion? When the sting of grief for loved ones lost and the passing of a torturous but familiar normality has subsided, what wisdoms of the elders will we bring forth? And what new story will we willingly embrace? And as the tides of our lives turn towards holding more yesteryears than future horizons, and our voices are reduced to whispers, and the fruits of what we did with our time in this moment are laid before another generation, will we be remembered as the brave and true ones who dared to stand, hand in hand, hearts open, unafraid, ushering in the break of a new day?
Thank you so much. Sandra. I'm really glad you could make it. And I have to say, you know, like so many of us who work really hard, it's like every time I ask you to read, some disaster happens. And that tells me that you are working your butt off day and night. It's like, I thank you for your passion, but we want you to stick around for a long time. Stay well and healthy. Okay, so the next will be Lisa Tiny Gray Garcia.
I just want to say thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Shizaway. And thank you for everybody. Yeah, I just want to thank my Mama D for without whom there be no me. To all the mamas who are dying from this COVID-19 and the virus called poverty, which was here a lot longer, and colonization than any virus that we're dealing with now. As I always start with what I call my slam bio, and that houseless mama, that houseless daughter. I am a poverty scholar. All those people you don't want to see, never want to be, look away from me. What you going to do, arrest me? We're in your city. I'm a melanin challenged daughter of a strong Afro-Boricua mama for without whom there would be no me. A mama soltera and a welfare queen. Most of you who know me know that I was houseless for most of my childhood with my mama, and then again later when I was an adult with my son. There's nothing like that experience. And so I'm standing here along shoulder to shoulder with my brothers and sisters who are on the streets right now, who are struggling in the occupied village of Yalamu, aka San Francisco, and all across Turtle Island with the lie of hoarded hotel rooms when there's places for folks to be who are unsheltered. How do you shelter in place when you don't got a place? So I'm lifting and I'm bringing that spirit in. I want to thank Nicole for bringing the young scholar and the sister up. But for most of you know, I was houseless, so I'm real good at adapting to these terrifying crises because I've lived through the crisis of poverty. And so I'm on the road actually doing what we call radical redistribution today. But I got my whole phone thing going and I got my little poem ready for Shizaway because to be real, Shizaway, thank you because this is what saves me. This poetry is medicine. And to get through the lives that many of us have lived, this is the only way, for me anyway. This is my medicine. So I thank you for this space and for always remembering me and many of us whose voices often are silenced. So I called this piece, and I want to lift up Uncle Al Robles. We just celebrated his ceremony of his passing, and he's one of our ancestor board members at POOR. For those of you who don't know, we've been doing interdependence on the street. We call it interdependence, sharing food and supplies with unhoused and poor people since the beginning of POOR magazine. This is nothing new. It's just that literally our lines of 100 or 200 have gone to 700. So I'm in the streets sometimes up to 10, 11 o'clock at night, and this work is real. It's hard and it's exhausting, but it's also all I can do to live. And so again, thank you for the poetry. Thank you for this medicine. This piece is called From Katrina to Corona. Shout out to my brother Leroy. Shout out to First Nations of this land, Karina Gold and others, and Kim Shuck, who are still here. Thank you, Raphael, too. That beautiful piece. From Katrina to Corona, all lies from the massa and the owner. Yeah, the ones that say they own Mama Earth, the stealing fathers, founding fathers, who have raped and pillaged since birth. What did they find when they arrived? Indigenous peoples who always shared love, food, and were always kind, only to be destroyed by people who declared at Turtle Island, everything is mine. Yeah, this is a lie. This aristocracy crazy continues today, except hegemony rules the day. The faces and spaces aren't just white and pink. They are all colors and somehow got bought up into this greed group think. But now it's about the blood-stained dollar and its supposed power and the shadowy wealth-hoarding masses perpetrating out of the rich white tower. Family, these were never solutions. It's just more measles-filled blankets and Katrina superdomes and fracking extracting solutions and pollutions. In Katrina, po folks waited on rooftops for anyone, but racism and classism, genocide is real. Capitalist violence is real. Criminalizing and profiling every poor person it gets. From sit-lie laws and stop and frisk, this ish ain't new, it's just become more dangerous for us to rely on any government. Shelter beds, navigation centers, hoarded hotel rooms, it's time to liberate. The stolen money, the stolen land, the stolen water, take it all back. Can you relate? Listen to First Nations who are still here after 527 years. Stop buying and selling Mama Earth. Stop believing like it's breathing in the lie of rent and real as snakes. None of us are okay unless all of us rise up and say, F yo fake ass stolen land state. Stop the perpetrate of looking away. Let's all liberate. Ashe, aho, umateo. Love you, family. Poormagazine.org. You can support us. We always need help. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tiny. I don't have as much time as I would like to do my own writing because this damn organizing stuff, it's all the little pieces of it are pretty consuming. Well, a couple of things that I got out of the first 3 weeks was time to spend with my grandchildren. You know, they had gotten so scheduled up with play dates and preschool and school and all this other stuff that we had to schedule. We had to make appointments, you know, maybe 6 times a year I got to see my grandchildren, and I had, you know, sort of seen them once a week when they were toddlers and babies, and that wonder of children. So it was kind of neat to see parents in the street walking their kids and actually paying attention to their kids and not their cell phones. So I thought that was kind of neat. So I stayed away from the Mission District for the first 3 weeks. Didn't want to bring my germs over there, but I was really concerned about what was going on in the TL and in the Mission. And in the TL, I saw a clot of homeless shelter in place on a Medusa's raft of sidewalk, side by side, huddling close, heads bowed to the same angle, shielding each other from the hate that kills as surely as the virus. To 2 unsheltered women on Mission Street. To the young woman, a shade lighter than cafe au lait, bleached dreads bunched in a top knot, tied with a stylish scarf, talking loudly. On a cell phone? No. Arguing with yourself and shrieking, sharp, sudden yips and sudden jumps as if you wanted to leap out of your body, escape your own skin. I want to take you in my arms, you who fear touch and long for it. What demons are chasing you, and for how long? To the young woman sitting on the sidewalk, legs crossed as if in meditation, hoodie huddled head erect, searching for that peace you know is there, but not here, not in the grit of Mission Street. You're haloed by orange peels, discards, or a gift. Before I could reach out to you, a man comes out, towers over you, screeching like a banty rooster. Your neck shrinks down into your shoulders. I wait until he turns away. Sneak close, but daren't speak. Our eyes connect as I slip you a 5, rolled tight so he won't notice you now have something more he can take. Your face is grimy, brown like the street, a darker shade than when you left. Sri Lanka, Kerala. I wish I knew. I wish I could tell you how sorry I am. I wish I could take you in. This is a poem to some of the people in my neighborhood of stubborn weeds. I'm praying that COVID came just in time to rescue it from total eradication, preserving the last of the grit from $1 million scrubs of virgin olive oil, oatmeal, and sage by the pampered few who can afford to bathe their skins with what lesser folk can eat. I'm hoping this scare will slow them down like the bursting of .com 1 or the '89 earthquake. It used to be that coastal fog was enough to keep out those who did not love this land and its fragile interface with sea and sky, sometimes all unseen all summer long. Morning fog micro droplets bursting against our cheeks, reminding us like warning blasts and mournful bellows, signaling ships at sea and landlubbers alike that we are all adrift on life. Reality rising and falling, heaving and lulling by turns. There are no guarantees, only the invitation to risk. We are a hardy people, buckwheat and sorrel, plantains, dandelions and succulents. Look down your nose at us. Indulge yourself elsewhere with showy blooms and gourmet grazings. We are a plain people whose meager dollars sent a generation to college so they could look down on us too. Now they are learning there are no guarantees, except death comes to all of us in the end. Life rises from how you meet it. All right. Thank you. Tony Alderondo.
I speak in lengua franca. Essential workers are my heroes. The art exhibition of the dead in my head of Picassos, Frida Kahlos, and Neros. I've got the spirits of dead poets in my head. When I close my eyes, I see them. Like last night, they sold out an open mic at the Oakland Coliseum. Miguel Piñero tocando lo cuero, Virito Mas reciting verses. Frida Kahlo pintando, Frida Kahlo on stage with her colores, her love disperses. With her colores, her love disperses. I've got James Brown and Prince living on the funky graveyard side of my mind, where the smell of funk is in the air and the music's not hard to find. Where James Brown and Prince don't give a damn that they're constantly on rewind, played over and over and over again until they blow my mind, until they blow my mind. I want what I cannot have nor cannot see. I want the world and eternity. I want to run wild and be free. Don't want no one bothering me. I want a ticket on a JetBlue plane. Want to break up without feeling pain. And want every man, woman, and child suffering from a mental health illness to please stop being called insane. I want to know how homelessness could exist in a rich-ass city like this, where most people live every day like it's a second Christmas. I want back my old neighborhood. I want back my youth. I want to be angry, and that's the truth. I want some justice. I want no lies. I want no funerals. I want no cries. I want all men to experience the blind. I want them to see that beauty's in the mind. I want back the memory the police beat out of me Saturday, August 14th of 1993. I want back that memory. I want back that knowledge. They beat me so bad, I had to drop out of college. I want to know who, what, where, why, and when the hood life begins and the good life. When the good life begins and the hood life ends, I want to know. This next one's called Palo Santo, the sacred tree. The Palo Santo tree is found in Ecuador and is the only tree in the world that dies to give life. And as it burns, it nourishes us with an aromatic treasure that provides healing energy for the mind, body, and spirit. So I burn Palo Santo in 3 sticks with my right hand in 7 circles next to my right ear to invite the good news into the 4 corners of each room in my house. And when all my prayers are said and done and the Ecuadorian smoke settles, I let the healing of El Palo Santo begin. And again, I thank Mother Earth 3 times for the trees, for even in death, she gives life. Church of a Poem. I baptized myself in Bacardi last night before I put a pen in my hand. And it's been quite some time since I've stepped inside the Church of a Poem. And I tell you that baptism Bacardi had me feeling some kind of way. I felt like I was balancing on a high wire while flipping words with infinite syllables like pancakes, swinging on a flying trapeze. Oh, it's been quite some time since I've stepped inside the Church of a Poem, and there are days and nights I never want to leave. What I seen inside my mind's ring last night were 2 writing wrestlers discussing with love their opposite sides of the spectrum with pride. Inside my gray matter, or I don't hide the fact that for some time things didn't really matter. But I baptized myself in Bacardi last night before I put a pen in my hand and realized that it's been quite some time since I've stepped inside the Church of a Poem, where praises go up and blessings come down, and sometimes sacred verbs can get twisted and burn sacred nouns to the ground. Now as I read, I let the Palo Santo burn inside the room of this Zoom as I remind myself it's been quite some time since I've stepped inside the Church of a Poem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I'm glad you could make it. Josiah Luis, you're on next.
Hey, how you doing, Shizu?
Hey, you got your gato.
Yeah, he's pretty much mandatory to all of them. He's a Zoom whore.
Ah.
Yeah. This is Bolano right here, Bolano. So yeah, that's a poll, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate all this things that people have been saying beforehand. I did want to take a moment though and just really say gracias to you, Shizu, for putting out these anthologies. I know we're all really wrapped up in a lot of heavy things right now, I understand, but hopefully we can take it to heart, the importance of this coming out, and get some love from that, because, man, this anthology and anthologies is really the continuation of a beautiful tradition, because for me, the anthologies, man, they broke open my perceptions of what poetry is, and the really amazing, I'm thinking like Aloud, the Puerto Rican, Nuyorican anthology, the Black Fire anthology, Technicians of the Sacred. So Shizu, I very much see this project of yours in that tradition, and I really appreciate you doing this. I know they're tough on you, but you know what? Too bad. You got to keep doing them, because if you don't, we're going to be in trouble, because these are important to keep doing them, and you also know the very important time and place for all of us here in La Bahia, as writers of color and our allies together. So these kinds of things are so important, And I also imagine the young kid opening one of these up, man, and what happens to his mind. So I really want to thank you for doing this and holding these gatherings. And I'm not going to let you off the hook. You cannot stop, you cannot. So I want to say gracias to you for that, Shizu. Seriously.
Thank you. So I need your help Josiah Luis. In
No, I'm not going to help you. No, it's all you.
You personally, you need to spread the word. We need allies. You know, we all know people out there that are making money and are working jobs that they may not find particularly fulfilling, but they do it anyway because they got to pay the rent, they got to feed the kids, and there's maybe a little bit of good work that's being done along with the bureaucratic or corporate bullshit. We all know people like that. You know, some of us have been there. That's how I raised my kids. I used to work at J. Walter Thompson, an advertising agency.
Well, I mean, not to.
Yeah. So, but
people trying to, but I'm actually more of the mind that we don't need those people. We could do it ourselves.
We do. We need those people to support our work.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll look out for them, but I'm gonna keep the brown and black folks in mind first. I'm gonna reach out to them first because honestly, we need that. You know, we really do. And actually, speaking of that, you know, I'm blessed to be running a Latinx reading series in Oakland, and I just wanted to let everyone know that next month we're doing a really beautiful benefit for Calma, which is they're an amazing collective that just started in the Bay Area. They're an immigrant advocacy group that helps familias just coming over and asylum seekers. So we're doing a benefit for them that I'm hoping you can all attend. It's on the 21st of May. It's going to be a Zoom event. Maybe we'll get a couple millionaires in there, Shizu. We can grab them, but it's going to be very, very special because we have Ingrid Rosas Contreras, Colombian Chingona writer of Fruit of a Drunken Tree, is going to be there, as well as Joseph Rios, the amazing poet who published Shadowboxing last year that won the For Columbus Foundation Book Award. So, por favorcito, come and support Calma. They're amazing. They do outreach to familias. They provide meals for our day labor hermanos and hermanas out there. You know, they distribute masks as well. They do all kinds of beautiful things. So that's the 21st of this month at Speaking at Xolotl. So please, all of y'all, show up, support. We could do this together.
Yeah.
Put it in the chat too.
I will, Tony.
Yes. Yeah. Put it in the chat. Anybody who has things that they want to share, put it in the chat, and we'll send it out later. Yeah. So, Josiah Luis, do you have a poem for us?
Yeah, I should do a poem, hon. All right. Here we go. This is, without a doubt, dedicated to mi gente, okay? This is going out to you with a lot of love. This is my mantra. This is what keeps me connected right now. So, para all of you. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? ¿Qué somos? Pues somos starlight that was forgotten in the glove box of Xochipilli's yellow El Camino. Somos nopales espinas that pricked our tata abuela's sueños of living here in los United States. Somos scared childhood momentos that are tattooed on El Pupui's left arm. Somos huesos en el cielo being gnawed on a jaguar right now. Que somos, mi gente? Somos a conejo-shaped wound that you can see quite clearly on Cuyushuacui when the moon is full. Somos the candelas still lit on the ofrendas back in our old neighborhood. Somos the smell of burnt tortillas. Somos a bowl of beans that have been soaking in agua since the beginning of this Quinto Sol. Somos the broken taillights of a .com conquistador's car as he drives over shell mounds on his way to the next century's chingadera. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? ¿Qué somos? Pues somos the first drops of divina sangre shed by Huitzlopochtli in defense of his mama. Somos the ruins of our idols, of our gods, still buried underneath the dirt in Teotihuacan. Somos a white cowboy hat on a Tigres del Norte album cover. Somos the severed parts of our own goddesses. Somos gods who leave their own body parts behind to help create time. Que somos, mi gente? Pues somos the taste of nopal syrup and amaranth cakes that the conquistadors mistook for the taste of flesh and blood. Somos a pile of huesos left out in la frontera that no one's ever going to find. Somos brown-skinned children in American cages left to die. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? Pues somos the wrinkles of our abuelita's skin. Somos the flayed skin of Shepitoltec. Somos a 500-year-old joyride in a demigod, blue-eyed god stolen Ranfla with the bones of the 1,000 conquistadors who we killed on La Noche Triste in the trunk, man. Somos our own mistranslations. Somos our own misinterpretations. Somos our own migrations. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? Somos our own milagros. Somos our own balazos. Somos mariposas de humo that disappears. They flutter across that pinche border. Somos constellations that you can only see if you hold the sky up to a smoking mirror. Somos cempasúchils, watered with agua that comes from ni de aquí ni de allá. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? ¿Qué somos?
Thank you, Josiah Luis.
Thank you, Shizu. Gracias, mi gente. Gracias. I love you all.
Beautiful, Ray.
You all.
Beautiful piece, bro.
Wonderful.
Next will be Dennis Bernstein. I just want to say there are several readers that I invited today who had books that came out just as COVID hit. And one of them was Dennis. Another one is Jennifer Hasegawa. Another one was Tarita Mikkel and Kimi Sugioka.
Hello, everybody. Really an honor to be here and to listen to all the poetry and the response to this pandemic. These are terrible times. I've been doing some reporting on the brown and black people who are being forced onto that meat producing assembly line. Really extraordinary people who have taken on the largest pork processors in the world and sued them. Why? Because on this assembly line, it's hard to believe, it's counterintuitive. They are fined and punished if they try and cover their mouths when they cough, or try and use a handkerchief when they cough. That's right, they're fined for trying to stand and protect themselves and their brothers and sisters against the pandemic. It's an unbelievable situation. What's happening in the context of the President of the United States signing a special order to force these folks back in the plant. Well, we did find one plant in Missouri where the workers are standing up. They're suing the company for all the right reasons, for essentially creating a death house to keep the meat assembly line going. You don't stop and cover your mouth when you cough, or you get fined because you're slowing down the line. That's what's going on in this country. And this is happening in the middle of a pandemic. It's absolutely unbearable. Anyway, I had to say that. And I have to really honor those workers from the Rural Community Workers Alliance, from the Rural Community Workers Alliance, who are standing up against the largest meat packers in the world. This is an extraordinary moment. These are terrible times, but people are standing up. I I want to say something about poetry in the age of the pandemic. You know, the pandemic wants us to be anti-touch people. Poetry is touch, but now love is anti-touch. And I get that, and I'm watching it unfold before me. But something about the dying and being forced to die alone. You know, I've had the privilege to be with my parents when both of them passed away. And it can be an extraordinarily beautiful thing. And it's being taken away from people now. And it's an amazing thing to see. Can you imagine, you know, the last two feelings that we have when we're dying are hearing and touch. Hearing and touch. So the touch is cut off. The touch is cut off. And what do you hear from 6 or 12 feet on a respirator? All you hear is that respirator. These are terrible times. It's amazing for me because as I move into this, continue the reporting, continue to give voice to the voiceless, I have to keep thinking about my father. Because the story, the revolving story, the story that he told me throughout his whole life was the fact that his mom died giving him his first breath in 1918 in a pandemic, in the flu pandemic. So this was the sort of recurring story in my father's life. I studied that 1918 pandemic. I would say to myself, wow, I'm so lucky that I didn't have to live through that terrible thing. But here we are. I've been thinking about my father a lot and how much that meant to him. And so and just to sort of remember what's being lost by being forced, by us being forced, by our people being forced to die alone. I know this is a selfish thought as I look out the window here and I see the people 6 feet apart with their masks on at the teller window. I want to somehow bring back a little bit of normalcy, and I want to honor that privilege that I had with my father to be with him, to stand with him when he passed away. So can I just conclude by reading you a poem about that experience? How lucky I have been, and maybe you might think I'm selfish, but I say this with the greatest respect. I'm really glad that my father didn't have to live through this.
Amen.
Had to live to worry that his grandchildren would be swept away. I've been having dreams about this. This is called Strong Medicine. Last time I saw my dad, and it was a beautiful moment. Strong Medicine. The night before he died, he craved for ice cream on a stick. He swore he heard the bells outside, the truck across the street. Could I sneak out and buy a round for all of us, his treat? There was no truck across the street, no crisp bells crackling, but the canteen in the basement did have 2 dusty old machines dispensing pops and cones and cups. I filled the slots with coins. At 50 cents a shot, those 2 machines unleashed more vital pain relief that night than the steady drip of morphine clouding father's final scene. Ah, the loot, he beamed and drew a shallow breath and then another. I toast to the bitter and the sweet. He tore the wrapper off his treat before he lost his breath completely. I watched him eat. I watched him eat like a kid on the sneak before dinner that night as death took a brief back seat to a chocolate-covered ice cream bar on a stick. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dennis. Hold up your book for a second.
Can you see it? Oh, here we go.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leah Dunn.
Thank you to everyone who already read. It's all been so amazing. This is something I wrote called My Favorite Things About Quarantine. People often tell me to be more positive. Usually white or cis-het people say this, but QT Pop can be assholes too. I guess I can't fault them. How could I not be completely satisfied with the world as it currently is? I should try to be more positive, less of a drag. In that spirit, here's a list of my top 6 favorite things about quarantine. 1, nurturing my inner misanthrope. Is it bad to say I don't mind not seeing anyone besides my grandma and my aunt? Bars in the Bay are so expensive, but now it's acceptable to drink plum wine on your bedroom floor while binge watching Love is Blind. Most of all, I love crossing the street when I see people approaching me. I've always wanted an excuse to yell, "Keep your distance," at white people jogging. 2, everyone who ever thought I was too much is now having mental health problems. Oh, you want advice on how to manage your anxiety? Pay me first, then I'll think about it. 3, even more reasons to hate white people. I live in San Francisco Chinatown on the edge of Nob Hill. Looking out the window from the safety of my own isolation, I see elders walking home with groceries and people heading to essential jobs. There are also lots of white people exercising. They almost never wear masks. The runners are the worst. They barely give a foot of space to people they pass while creating a saliva slipstream in their wake. The other day, I spotted a white man running down Powell Street. I stopped about half a block away to let him pass. He looked at me and spit into the street. Then he kept running, spitting 2 more times before he was out of sight. But this isn't very funny. There are so many bigger reasons to hate white people now and always. Humor isn't always the best coping mechanism. 4, getting to know who I truly am. They say that in times of crisis, the person you truly are comes to the surface. The person I truly am is petty and pretty self-centered. I spend a lot of time moping that I've run out of hot Cheetos and contemplating questions like, do I have enough arm muscles to carry home vegetables for 2 weeks and shrimp chips? How many ways can I cook a cabbage before my family revolts? Is it wise to dip into my savings to replenish my supply of edibles? I've also gotten to shirk a lot of my previous responsibilities because social distancing. Sorry, I can't come by anymore. I can drop off food, but no, I can't stay to chat. I can't visit you in the hospital because they won't let me. And I know we were looking for an assisted living, but I don't think they're taking people right now. Sorry. Every time I hang up the phone, I feel a twinge of guilt. But I'm also relieved to be alone in my room as I lull myself to sleep with indica gummies. 5, I'm no longer the only person in a long-distance relationship. I used to be bitter when I saw other couples holding hands or being cute, lucky bastards whose partners live in the same city. But now everyone is long distance. I can finally stop pretending I want to have a life outside of my relationship and spend at least 2 hours a day video chatting my partner. I might as well embrace being a total queer stereotype, LDR, and social distance U-hauling. Sometimes in the middle of talking about my feelings, I'll say to my partner, sorry, this is kind of sad. I should tell you something funny. They say, what? No, you don't have to be funny. That's not your job. 6, yelling at my family to stay home. I've always been that child drowning in filial piety. Since the shelter-in-place started, I've yelled at my family members more than I have in my entire life. Where did this box of chow my phone come from? No, ice cream is not an essential item. My grandma now calls me the boss, and whenever my aunt goes for a walk, she says, I'm just getting some air. Don't start with me. I like anger. Like humor, it buoys me. So much easier to say, where do you think you're going, than I'm scared of what might happen to you. I love you. I love you so fucking much.
Thank you, Leah. So one of the challenges for me has been to try to get more Asian Americans to speak up. And I find a lot of people complain that they're invisible, but when I ask to take their picture, they go, oh no, not me. And when I ask them to write their stories, which they're sometimes willing to tell me, they don't want to do it. So anyway, thank you, Leah, for having the courage to to write about what's real for you. Thank you. Tango Eisen Morton,
Hey,
thank you for being here.
good to be here. Good to see everybody and all the loved ones. Capitalist dropped 10 tons of barbed wire on my Tuesday shift. We shot back at their chimpanzee pilot for the sport. The contractor has already smoked 3 cigars only 1 hour into my court appearance shift. Supervisor likes the smell, says it reminds him of when he ran the streets, and all I remember is we shot back. A gated puppet dances alone. Bars and jigs says I'm the happy one of Legion. Meanwhile, kids commit childhood behind his wooden plaster joints. Wire dodgers under this silly puppet. A silly puppet dancing for white heaven. Like weapon is a jacket and precinct holds Friday hostage. We go through a fossil jaw and see a judge. The tunnel at the end of the light. I sleep until I'm woke by dry cereal and surrender. This holding cell only needs a giant panhandler's palm to shake us coin men around. I'm breaking my fingers for my sister's bill collectors. Garage casket open. I mean all third world parallels kill openly. Breaking my lungs for my sister's rent. I'm a sculptor of construction dust. I miss cigarettes by mid-morning. I miss Hennessy by sundown. I miss murder by inches. $5 bills cherish my days outside, always behind. There's no concentration in this courtroom. Just a bunch of B+ students living out their nightmares. How do I plead with a straight face? 2 blocks up is a reoccurring cliff, along with slavers' paraphernalia, along with the ordinary panhandler, along with ethnic parade history, along with the ethnic parade, along with 13th graders. Yeah, let's talk about the fact that 4 dead children later, I still don't have a problem beating you up in front of everybody. Let's talk about the fact that money is death. Down in my last $5 is what I call this shoe. 10 o'clock political education is what I call this dream. I got the job is what I call this blues. 2 days later is what I call the cliff. I talk facing away from the dead. They replaced me with the change in my pockets. You know, a penny that's yet to be invented. They say you have to know how to cut a throat on the way to cutting a throat. After sleeping on a mattress made from 2 garbage bags of clothes, I became content with the small gestures of plantation fires. I mean, playing with couch ashes, I realized how weird the universe was. It exists in so many places, so many random things. It interrupts me while I'm trying to dream. Like your clay correspondence, Lord. To be transparent, I have 20 books next to a bullet like an old man giving advice at the beginning of a revolution. I've really done it, Lord. Explored the mumbles of my mind. Explored what's naturally there, and I found no brainwashing. I found Africa, Lord. I have a future. It takes place in the diasporic South. I have morning possessions, modern militancy. I mean windows to the South. I'll walk on a missile for food. I guess you will not want flowers for a few years, Lord. Will I be tied face to face with the country I murdered? Merge with us, Lord. Our old metal versus new metal. Our old metal versus a pool of meandering imperialist faces, of multiculturalism of sorts. You know, they replaced me with a comedian's chest cavity instead of a chest cavity held tight. It takes a violent middleman for me to talk to myself. Stories that travel through other people's stories, you know. Like a song about a song, a hemisphere about a hemisphere, stories that travel through a conquered poet. And my mother remembers Africa, Lord. She killed on behalf of you, Lord. I wore a machete all winter and no one asked me what it meant. I read 1,000 books in front of the world. You know, what I do is fight poems and sleep through decking in San Francisco prayer circles. You know, watch people play for post-working class associate surfaces or recreations of the governor's desk. Ruling class art of utility playing fine a sociopathic bureaucrat. Today, some white people scare even easier. TV in a basket next to a ceramic baby wearing ceramic armor, musket prizing, fantasizing through the art of the poor. Their trendy latches locked before God. Hand over my friends, Lord. Lord, I think I'm going to die in the war. Unelected white people in my small house like a blues song of no spiritual effect, or dollhouse ace bomb, a pony show near dead bodies, apartheid weddings that go right. Apartheid white people who give birth to mathematicians, the spiritual continuity of barracks and police stations, a chemical interpretation of a Sunday trip to church. Church smells in their pockets, a river mistaken for a talking river. No autobiography outside of small personal victories of violence and drug use, made in the image of God's trinkets, what white abolitionists confided in their children about. Chemical assurances that they will switch from black artist to white artist, black guy to white guy, black worker to white worker. I think about you cautiously, Lord. In the same way I think about my childhood, Lord. Foxhole Friday nights, most of life is mute. A comedian points out a planter's field to a priest. King Sugar Cane, King Cotton, King Revolutionary, the Bottle Central, containing all modes of shallow introduction, introducing an unlisted planter class, speaking about fevers and balance sheets and reassuring the masses that we can figure out our fathers later. A priest took my mother lightly, Lord. Stood in front of parishioners, re-raveling fantasies about Black art, preached reading confidently before I broke them and broke his parallel. Now, after the day, I've never been a poet before. A little brother watches his big brother's friends. They lean rifles on shelter walls. They agree with me and call it literature. It's a simple matter, this revolution thing. To really lie to no one, to keep nothing godlike, to write a poem for God. I go to the railroad tracks and follow them to the station of my enemies. A cobalt-toothed man pitches pennies at my mugshot negative all over the United States. There are toddlers in the rock. Man, I see why everyone out here got in the big cosmic basket, and why blood agreements mean a lot, and why I get shot back at. I understand the psycho-spiritual refusal to write white history or take the glass freeway. White skin tattooed on my right forearm, ricochet sewage near where I collapsed into a rat-infested manhood. My new existence is living graffiti in the kitchen with a lot of gun cylinders to hack up. House of God in part, no cops in part. My body brings down to Christmas. The new bullets pray over blankets made from old bullets. Pray over the 28th hours next beauty mark, extrajudicial Confederate statue restoration, the waistband before the next protest post-aid. By the way, time is not an illusion, Your Honor. I will save your deaths for last. You are witty, Your Honor. You're moving money again, Your Honor. Yeah, it's only raining one thing. Non-white cops and prison guard shadows reminded me of spoiled milk floating on an oil spill. The neighborhood making a lot of fuss over its demise. A new lake for a Black Panther party. Malcolm X's ballroom jacket slung over my son's shoulder. The figment of village, a new noose to a new white preacher, all in an abstract painting of a president. A boss slaver some time, didn't it? The tantric screeches of military bolts and election Tuesday cars, a cold-blooded study in leg irons, and the leg irons inside of a tornado shelter, leg irons inside of your body, proof that some white people have actually fondled nooses. That sundown couples made their vows of love over opaque piece plastic and boat action audiences. The Medgar Evers second is definitely my favorite law of science. Fondled news clippings and primitive Methodists, my arm changes imperialism. Simple policing versus structural frenzies, elementary school script versus even wider white spectrums, artless bleeding and the challenge of watching civilians think of terrible rituals they have around the corner. They let their elders beg for public mercy. I'm going to go ahead and sharpen these kids' heads in the arrows myself and see how much, gravy spills out of family crafts, modern fans of war. What with their t-shirt poems, the t-shirt guilt, and me having on the cheapest pair of shoes on a bus, I have no choice but to read the city walls for signs of my life. The end.
Thank you, Tango. Jennifer Hasegawa.
Hi, everyone. I'm just overwhelmed, actually. Thank you, everyone, for your words. Such a pleasure being with you this afternoon. I'm going to read a poem from my new book with one edit to it. I'm a little bit nervous about reading it, but it's the piece that's on my mind right now around all of the sort of anxiety and worry around keeping everyone safe while also trying to stay human. A black hole operator speaks. Yes, there had been salmonella, but this dining room was my place to write. Sure, it was fast food that resembled nothing of its declared origins, but whatever does. A family of 8 communed over trays of colas and chalupas. Lola, arms spread across her corner booth, fired commands in Tagalog into her headset. They understood the beauty of this place that had united the taco and the fried chicken. The colonel stared out of a frame on the wall. All at once, he looked black, white, Chicano, Asian, and everyone better together. Brown lumps under heat lamps. Is it chicken, corn, wood? On my tray, is it taco, pie, purse? I got a token for the bathroom. A fly occupied the space with me. I flushed and felt something on the handle. I blasted my hand with hot water. I pumped soap. I had another human shit on my finger, and I started to hallucinate. Toxic shock appeared as a white stallion, stomping its front hoof, imploring me to jump on. Dysentery was Madonna, wanting, needing, waiting for me to justify her love. Then the Rona showed up. and took me back to the afternoon in a remote bathroom at work where I found a woman at a sink washing her hands encased in thick clouds of suds like boxing gloves. She was young with red hair and a long string of pearls. She didn't look up, she didn't stop. She was washing for the end, widening that gap between herself and the final processing of what cannot be absolved, of what cannot be absorbed. Back at my table, my finger bloated and red, the ringing in my ears shook the crumbs across the table. 80 degrees with a dusting of wheat, dander, water, cellulose, and white. Tiny world rose up all around me, microbes and their fine net that ensnares all. The universal program to feed, reproduce, and die until we meander too close to that magnificent keeper where all things end again and again. Orbiting the rim of bent light, the family of 8, your Lola, the kernel, a clutch of hens, and an infinity of yourselves, slowing, reddening, and finally spaghettified through the cosmic sphincter, tightened by gravity herself. Finally, witness and subject to the alchemic singularity. The operator chuckles and shakes its head. You dumb fucks have been wasting your time, keeping them separate. Purity, filth, it's all the same here. Thank you. Thank you, Shizue.
Thank you. Hold up your book. Oh, yes. A Chica's Field Guide to Bonsai Living. Next will be Tamina Khan.
Salam alaikum. Peace be upon everybody. Ramadan Mubarak to all my Muslim siblings out there. I've had the great privilege of teaching poetry for the people at City College this semester, a dual enrolled class with Balboa High School. So I'm putting a shout out to the Balboa poets. And I've been asking all of us in our poetry community to find healing and bear witness to what's transpiring in our society. I'm going to read 2 poems. This is called City on Pause. Spring sneaks up on us in this strange silence of the city. My car parked for a week. Up on the hill, blue sky and turquoise bay waters shimmer. At the ferry plaza, a lone man sings hallelujah to nobody. In the one open shop, I look past chocolate and gourmet sauces and settle on sour cherry jam from Greece, craving its bold, sour sweetness. Hand-drawn signs in windows all across the city. Stay safe, San Francisco. We love you. Thank you, healthcare workers. A globe drawn in the shape of a heart. The word faith written under the image of La Virgen. Human ruckus on pause. The raccoons run up on my roof, screeching. A shy coyote walks down my street, away from her hillside home. Do the sea lions at Pier 39 wonder where we've gone? Are the seagulls searching out scarce scraps of junk food? Neighbors gather 6 feet apart, singing, lean on me when you're not strong. The pink moon in the lilac sky doesn't know whose lungs are collapsing. She rises, golden, then silver. The street erupts with clangs and claps for healthcare workers. Late at night, I sit, holding the city on pause. When we emerge from our chrysalis stillness, what will we become? And then this next one I'm calling Sacred Distance. Passover passes us by, and my neighbors sing songs and celebrate with nightly video gatherings while feasting alone at home, praying for deliverance. Holy Saturday in Jerusalem 500 people gather virtually from all over the world, praying for resurrection after the virus, through science and solidarity, lighting candles alone and together, spreading light to the occupied, the imprisoned, the sick, the caregivers, reciting the Lord's Prayer in Arabic, Spanish, Italian, English, overlapping each other in a global chorus. And Ramadan begins. After a bike ride all across the deserted city, I walk up the hill at sunset to seek out the new crescent and prepare myself for my journey of daytime hunger to the next new moon. A woman in white veil crosses herself and bows before the shuttered door of St. Kevin's Church. Every evening at 8, neighbors clang pots and pans for healthcare workers, echoing the bells of Tassajara Zen Monastery, calling us to gratitude. My neighbor, Ofelia, sits on a concrete ledge where men often gather to drink. Oro por todos, she says, because only Dios can heal us. She recites in Spanish as my grandmother recited in Arabic, each incantation calling her deeper into the divine, a recitation older than Cristo, older than the 99 names, invoking a mystery deeper than language, invisible yet ever present. And all I can do is practice patience, kindness, and prayer for a redemption, a resurrection, a renewal, as we watch the grass grow on the hillside. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up are Robert Kikuchi Ingoho and Nancy Yuan, best known as Ethnotech.
Here we go.
Are we unmuted?
No, we are.
Yes. Oh, you are dressed up. Wow.
Yes, we did.
We thought we did dress up.
We usually do a lot of movement too, but we're going to not do that because I don't think it'll fit in this little square. But yes, we are storytellers.
We're called Ethnotech, and we're kinetic movement theater storytellers. And we perform all over the United States.
And across the world.
Schools, libraries, festivals. So we really get in a sort of normal environment. Through touring, we're able to get a pulse on America and on communities of color all throughout the country.
Yeah, we are particularly concerned right now because a lot of Asian Americans are being blamed for the coronavirus. There are 1,500 hate crimes so far recorded in the last 2 or 3 months, blaming Asians for, or Chinese, but they don't know the difference, so they'll blame any Asian for the virus. 2 and a 6-year-old's faces were slashed. A woman was splashed with acid in her face and her arms. It's really quite alarming, and it's not new.
During the 1800s and during the anti-Asian, the Exclusion Act against Chinese Americans, a lot of the media were creating propaganda saying that Chinese were spreading diphtheria and malaria.
And to not eat any produce picked by them. So it's not new. And here we are again. So we would like to do a story that is in honor of all of you. This afternoon has been absolutely wonderful, heart-filling, to all of you artists and the health workers, essential workers, teachers, anyone who right now is keeping all of us in their heart to keep us safe.
So there's a story from Tibet called Bodhicitta. There once was a rugged wilderness, sparsely populated by 2 warring feudal clans, nestled in 2 valleys, flanking either side of a snow-capped mountain ridge.
Ruthlessness and violence was the law of the land, for it was common for each clan to send marauding warriors into each other's territories to raid, pillage, and murder amongst their arch rivals to avenge some previous horror.
Oh, their hatred for each other was solid as granite and as jagged as the mountain tops that knifed between them.
But one day, a stranger appeared, a monk, wandering the narrow passage on the mountain ridge that separated these 2 rival villages. He gazed down into one of the valleys and saw children gathering flowers in the glen,
He saw women washing clothes by the river and singing together.
men tending yaks.
Then the stranger turned and peered down the other side of the mountain ridge and saw the same life of serenity. Children playing and laughing with their grandparents, men thatching a new roof, women tending the fire.
Suddenly, the villagers on one side looked up at the mountain pass. Look, a stranger!
The stranger then turned to the other side of the mountain. And then he saw that the men of that village also saw him and began pointing and shouting at him.
In that one moment, each peaceful scene changed dramatically. On both sides, he heard shouts and saw clansmen waving their hands.
The mothers rounded up the children.
Grandparents hobbled back into their homes.
The once gentle shepherds grabbed their swords and spears and transformed into fierce warriors.
They were ready for war.
The stranger stood and watched as bands of fierce warriors from each side of the mountain scurried up the switchback trail to ward off their assumed attacker. A spy!
A spy! A scout from our enemy village.
Soon more will come.
Oh, we must kill him.
Or we will lose our loved ones.
The warriors charged to the summit.
When they saw their counterparts seething with hatred for one another, they raised their blades for the attack.
Suddenly, both warring clans stopped. What is this?
Is he one of yours? They saw a single man, a stranger, lying in the middle of the path between the two warring clans.
His body like an offering, blocking the imminent savagery between the two warring clans. He must be one of yours. Look how the coward awaits his death. Both sides inched forward, ready to butcher the reclining man, when the stranger suddenly lifted his head from the ground and spoke.
I wouldn't get too close if I were you.
Oh, what are you, a leper? Are you insane? What would put you in the path of such destruction, old fool?
There is a condition that is highly contagious.
Oh, stand back, men. Stand back, shield yourselves. What is this? What are the symptoms?
It is so contagious that at first you may not even know you have it. If you get it, at first you feel a slight trembling deep in your soul. Then it moves to your head. You become disoriented. Then it moves again, this time to your heart. And when that happens, a stillness engulfs you. And when it gets that far, it's the end.
Oh, what is it? What is it, old man?
Yes, I have it. I have it. It's called bodhicitta.
Bodhicitta?
Bodhicitta, bodhicitta. What is bodhicitta? The warriors murmured among themselves and began to run away in terror. Run!
Run!
Bodhicitta! Bodhicitta, run!
Both sides scampered back down to their villages, leaving the stranger to die. Bodhicitta, bodhicitta, bodhicitta.
That evening, back in the village, a lone warrior sat at home in his favorite chair, staring at the floor. He was mulling over what he had witnessed on the mountaintop.
He looked at his family. The children giggling and playing games on the floor, the grandmother rocking the newborn, his wife brushing her hair and singing to herself.
Suddenly he felt something stir in his throat. A lump? Oh no!
He tried to swallow. The lump grew larger, and then he felt throbbing ache in his chest. He began trembling.
Oh, what's this? Have I got bodhicitta? Oh, my family. What if they get it from me? My loved ones, all of this gone.
He was sure it was just the beginning of this horrible bodhicitta.
He didn't want to let on to his family, so he feigned a smile and began singing with his wife.
She smiled back at him. It had been years since he had sung with her.
She smiled back at me. She hasn't done that in a long time. These might be the last moments I share with her.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the mountain ridge, another warrior too felt the early symptoms. A stirring in his soul, his mind disoriented, his thoughts pounding with his heart, pounding as he thought of this contagious bodhicitta.
He turned to his sister and described what he had seen on the mountaintop, what the ailing stranger must have given him.
Soon the bodhicitta passed on to a farmer and his wife, then to their children, and the children to their playmates, they to their parents, and on until no one was spared this bodhicitta.
One day, a villager from one side of the mountain was passing over the ridge when he encountered another traveler from the enemy village.
You!
Bodhicitta.
Yes, we all have it. The entire village has been infected.
Ours too. No one is untouched by bodhicitta. Life is so different now. Our people have surrendered to it. No one wants to waste any more time on those foolish things. No more thoughts of revenge. No more anger.
We too hold no more resentment, no more hatred, not even towards all of you. We only wish to enjoy the remaining and precious moments of life with our loved ones.
The two men nodded knowingly. They bid farewell and returned down the path to their villages. And high on the ridge, above the two valleys, the stranger arose and stepped forward into the light. He straightened his robe and smiled.
He looked down on one side of the mountain.
He saw children playing,
Grandparents tending to newborns.
mothers singing with their husbands.
Oh, he looked down at the other side of the mountain and saw the same thing.
On both sides, their enemies had been annihilated. They had met their end, but not their deaths, for they were very much alive, infected by the contagion, bodhicitta.
Bodhicitta, the compassionate heart of an awakened mind. Bodhicitta. And so, we want all of us, all of everyone in the world to be awakened, and we will not pray that we will not go back to what we thought was normal.
The normal that we knew as is not normal.
And all of you are so important, so let your voices be heard. Thank you very much, Shizue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert and Nancy.
Oh, look.
Oh. We also want to make sure that we have a book.
And other products.
And DVDs and CDs, those old things that nobody uses anymore.
They're antiques now, collector's items. But the book is still new technology, by page, no batteries. And it's a story about bilingualism, the story of my mother's Filipino immigration to America.
So up next is Aquila Lewis Ross. Aquila?
Hey.
Hey.
How are you? Hey, everybody. I am one of those folks that are on from out of California, actually. My family just moved to Las Vegas. That story is still in the making. I'm trying to figure out like how to write it and what's the best parts, but I did manage to get a poem out. I started it last Wednesday. I was on another open mic and I shared parts of it. And now I'm gonna share with you guys the finished part of it. The poem is called The Pushouts. The city that never sleeps is silent, forced to quarantine like everyone else. No wonder the mayor complains. Dollars were always made here, but now she sleeps. It's hot as hell, and Hades is awakened. The homeless is visible, letting flesh burn while laying on dirty streets. We rush to the nearest air-conditioned stores, hoping to be the first to let masked skin get soothed. We, travelers, migrated here after being pushed out. Not sure if disease the mind or body is to blame. War has been here all along. It slowly creeped in, and the rest of the world is now up to speed. But in our hearts, we hold on to hope for safekeeping, for healing, for clarity, for love, for home. Sometimes pushing is needed so greatness can have a seat on the throne. I'm gonna share two other quick little poems that I created with our beautiful host during her round robin that she offered to folks. I'm gonna share one from round robin 1 and also from round robin 2. The first one is from round robin 1, and it's a prompt called, the prompt is Slowly. This poem was published in the Benicia Herald, I think it was April 22nd. The Audacity of Water. Today on my walk, I heard the trickle of water. It's funny how its sound moves me to do anything I choose. The frigid wetness tickles my bones when they just want to be still. Mornings when I want to stay in, mostly because depression slowly crept in, water calms. Worry, panic, and fear of the unknown slowly melts away. See the pine trees wrestle with the wind, the way my baby blows the wishing flower and watches bubbles flow by. Although we are dying, nature still lives, and that's a reason to hope again. Round Robin 2 was one of my most favorite weeks of sharing poems and getting feedback from the lovely writers. This one is a poem that I think I love the most. It's called Give an Artist a Canvas. The prompt was paint. Give an artist a canvas and freedom to create as they please. Practice makes perfect. My body was the canvas, at first to be used to harm. Cells held on to pain from generations past. Ancestors spoke truth to power in and through me. It glowed from within, became my protection, adding another layer of gray-haired wisdom. Paint me gold, carrying riches buried and treasures never opened. See the key? Rich people always hide it in unattainable places. Paint me liquefied, fluid as water, blue-green like the ocean, a favorite color, peaceful, tranquil. I could stay here until pruning no longer is beautiful on skin. Saw a post about a mama who made rainbow spaghetti for dinner. Wish I were that creative or had the energy to be this dedicated. But I will do anything to see my little princess smile. Paint me rainbow. May I shine bright for all to see. So yeah, I'm on a journey, as we all are. And right now, the journey is unclear. It's not known exactly what I'm doing or where I'm going or how I'm getting there, but I know that me and my family had to get there. And you know the struggle that I was going through. And I've been going through struggles all my life, but I think right before COVID hit, right before COVID hit, my family was going through the worst battle, war or something. It's still kind of hard to really figure out what we're going through, but we're going through it. And now that we are here in Las Vegas, even though we're not exactly sure who's here and what who, what, where, when, why, I finally have gotten my sleep. I have peace, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what I'm supposed to do as an artist, what I'm supposed to do as a social justice advocate, worker, lover of words, lover of self, and I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to doing more work with you and other folks who are trying to figure out the next step. God bless everybody.
All right, thanks, and stay in touch. I'm going to be doing more virtual stuff with folks, so stay connected.
I am, definitely.
All right. Yeah, Aquila, you were in the first anthology, right? Standing Strong Film.
Yes, yes, I was. Thank you for that too.
How much you've grown and how much you've experienced. I think a lot of people are so sheltered and so insulated, they have no idea how tough it is for a lot of folks. So thank you for sharing. Next will be Kevin Madrigal.
Thank you so much for organizing this. What's up, Tony? What's up, everybody that's around? Hey, Norm. Norm, I love your photo because it's so like genuine, and that like every time I look at your photo, I think it's actually you just like staring at me, and I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, your photo. It's a good photo. Thank you, Rafa, for opening today's reading. I was burning my Palo Santo at the same time, so thanks for getting us off to the right start. Yeah, thank you to everybody that has shared so far. Honestly, I feel like for me personally, the past couple of months have been really difficult to write and just to like process everything that's going on. So like really big props to everybody. And if you've found difficulty in this time, to know that you're not alone. I think all of us are processing this at our own pace in our own way. And you know, we just have to keep pushing forward. So I just have a few really short poems because I haven't been getting as much writing as I'd like to be done lately, but some really quick ones. This one's called Safe. Be safe out there, says the older Black gentleman working the grocery store checkout in North St. Louis, Missouri, where nearly all COVID cases are Black folk. I say, thank you, you too. But is it safer in here? Not a white body to be seen for a mile. What secret is kept from essential workers? What information is held privilege? COVID was supposed to be the great equalizer, but survival is only for those that can afford it. It's a second piece called Not All Heroes Wear Capes. Not all heroes wear capes, but they do wear masks. At least Rosavilla does, for her protection and for yours. She's 73, and not a goddamn pandemic is going to stop her from distributing food to her community when they're in need. She makes sure each car that pulls up to the emergency food relief pantry is loaded before they're on their way. A beaming smile on her face, her mouth covered, but I can see it in her grin-wrinkled eyes. At 73, she's still a hero. Not a goddamn pandemic is going to stop her. And this last one, thank y'all. This last one, it's a really short one, super, super short. On some news that I was reading about some homeless individuals in San Francisco a couple weeks ago. 68 homeless individuals tested positive for the virus at a shelter in downtown San Francisco. They were moved from beds placed 2 feet apart from each other to isolation in hotel rooms around the city. Only in America will you be treated better as a virus than as a human. And that's all. Thank you all. Thank you, Shizue, for getting this together. Thanks, everybody, for sharing.
Thanks for being here. It's great to see you. Okay, next is Tarita McKell.
Thanks again, Shizu, for organizing this, and everyone. My Lord, that's why we need to listen to each other. It's such a healing at this time, a comforting moment to hear voices, people that you can't touch. But yes, and Nancy and Robert, we all deal with, just stereotypes. No one likes stereotypes, but then it's interesting how we can so quickly get caught up in them. It's the stereotyping, like this one person is responsible for everybody in that culture, in that nationality. But okay, moving forward, 2 quick pieces. Moyuba fefegun, Moyuba fefegun, Moyuba fefegun, Moyuba fefegun. We stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. Dr. Ben's quote said, if you believe this Noah's Ark story to be true, it explains why you are in the conditions you are in today. Details and tales derailed liberation. Inside a sight of revelations, epiphany waits to be real. Compared to what? Whose liberty do we referee trust? Who be the judge, the adjudicator, the mediator, the go-between? The father, son, and his ghost flashing fantasy. Heard Freedom Ring at JoJo's house the other day, singing with Mickey's monkey. Details derail the tales of emancipation, crippling insight where Mr. Man fights against deliberations, consideration, negotiating what? Who will be the umpire to decide how to play spiked ball game or which side of the bread sliced should be buttered? Details derailed, angle leashed, holding two opposing opinions, argued well against them both, manufactured consent for dictums hosts, serving milquetoast in sheep shit's shallow water. Details derailed, truth off track, sides and slides in holy woods, news of alternative facts, inform news racks of nouns without verbs, appoints trivial tactics, employing words, conjurers, coining acronyms, deemed authority. 1% minority televises to majority, friendly, cautionary tales. Tapped in warm gray brown cow biscuits exceeding olfactory's threshold, minds redesign, fallen wormholes. See, left is right, up is down, lateral, not sound, nor can be found in circles broken. Details derailed, dog, clown, survival. Fear, confusion, panic, stress, turning tricks, making human crucifix. Jesus for sale, Jesus in jail, Jesus on the corner, Jesus needs bail. Pass the plate. Details derailed, sunflowers, bees, Ark Covenant, biology. They know how to act. But a AI viral 5 technology decks next with bowels of folly rackets. Dances with Thor hammering thoracic melodies, dissonant histories, lyricists, homicidal cacophonies, pledging allegiance, flagged one nation under dog with liberty and justice for all. What? Unconditionally? By which means? Who said that? Why did they say that? And the people became afraid and bifurcated, split judgment in times of C9 afflictions, details derailed, homelessness, suicide, diseases, addictions, annihilating minds in the land of plenty. Lord, you said, physician, heal thyself. How can we heal if we can't judge the cards dealt? Holy Ghost. Holy Ghost, where heavens bank in earth shorelines, mothers, where tides rise and break by sun, moon, and stars, and children come forth as birthed ships, prophets of immortalities. I said, children come forth and as birth ships, prophets of immortalities, cells, trillions, singing throughout millenniums, holding tones, laws, genes, beams, waiting to astroblast into star-life, star-like generations. Generations germinating genies and genies of life, light, blood, living waters, captured and held by wells of human cells and held prisoner of infinite talents, faiths, wisdoms, and prophets. Ooh, Holy Ghost, mystery. Spooks us all like a ghost, but our organs cling to that origin, plays keys, fulfills wishes, breathed on banks. Prophets, the prophets of the Holy Ghost. Prophets, the prophets of the Holy Ghost. prophets, prophets of the Holy Ghost.
Thank you so much, Tarita. And tell us the name of your book.
The name of the book is Synchronicity, the Oracle of Sun Medicine. And it's published by Nomadic Press. And it just came out in February.
Okay, so look for it on Jennifer's list. And next is Crystal Perkins.
All right. I am very slow to process all of this. I was telling Shudzui in an email, because you kept asking me to write something about my experience as a teacher. So I've written a couple of poems. The first one is called From One Teacher to Another. It goes, Dear Rona, I'm going to teach exponential relationships this week. You are the prime example of how the curve goes upwards, neatly tabled evidence ample. We graph the cases doubling and the number of deaths per day troubling. As we make tables and model the flattening that we seek, the peak, the elusive peak. But then again, it's hard to preach the importance of Algebra 2 when a mom calls at 2:32 a.m. Saturday of week 2, sobbing, sorry to be rude. Yes, we got the laptop and the hotspot too, but what we need is food. Dear Rona, I'm going to teach about supply and demand, widgets and guns versus butter. You provide many examples. The supply of hospital beds, ventilators, protective gears, the swab samples, the demand of the people for life, work to get back to the pursuit of happiness. We'll play the stock market game. But then again, it's a luxury to lecture economic theory when a student texts from a neighbor's cell phone, teacher, I can't talk unless you call me because our phone is cut off. We just moved. Then my mom and dad were laid off. If I can't pay for phone, how am I gonna pay for college? Dear Rona, I'm gonna teach about the food chain. The biology textbooks say that humans are on top, but you are teaching me otherwise. The second poem that I have is called From One Virus to Another. Dear COVID-19, you are 10,000 times smaller than the human cell. You target our heart, lungs, kidneys, and intestines, invade, hijacking the cell's structure to replicate so that from one comes the two, comes the four, comes the multitude. So many more, you overwhelm our host. You are killing individuals, institutions. We humans strive to create antibodies against you. Dear COVID-19, all us humans put together are 10K to the 10th power, the size of the earth. We target the water, the atmosphere, the mountains, the valleys, colonizing and hijacking the planet's resources from Neolithic to agricultural through industrial revolutions into the New World Order, classes, consumerism, hyper inequalities, the haves and the have-nots revolt. With each revolution, we become stronger, more prolific at murder and mayhem. We are killing entire species and forests, overwhelming our hosts. Dear COVID-19, I think perhaps you are the Earth's antibody. Now Mother Nature pits us against each other, virus against virus. It's not personal, I know. All viruses are immoral, whether we want to admit it or not.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris is one of the regulars at the Right Now writing workshops. Love having her. So next up is Tony Robles.
Shizwe, thank you for putting this together, and thank you for all the wonderful work you do in the community, for nurturing and you know, our poetic voices. It's funny, my father was telling me a couple weeks ago, he said, you know, he never thought that this would have happened, that he didn't think he would see this COVID-19, a pandemic like this in his lifetime. And anyway, this poem is called Wash Your Hands. Wash your hands of the virus. Wash your hands of fear. Wash your hands of the calloused fates. Wash your hands of rope burns used to hang scapegoat effigies in glasshouse windows. Wash your hands of the virus. Wash your hands of liars and truth deniers. Wash your hands of tainted water, tainted seed and soil. Wash your hands of hymns that do not include her. Wash your hands of the virus in the cracks where lives the poison water of indifference. Wash your hands of compassion's muted chorus and the dried throats of flowers. Wash your hands of glacier hearts. Wash your hands of caged clocks. Wash your hands of sky torn asunder. Wash your hands. They are the powers that free. And I just have one more to read. I was kind of taken by a poem that Dennis Bernstein wrote so eloquently about his father, about the experience of being there for the death of his father, and how that was an important moment, and that many people in this pandemic don't get a chance to see their loved ones and spend time with them during their last moments. But anyway, this is a poem about my father. This was a poem about being at the movies. There was a movie theater on Market Street, and I think it was called the Embassy Theater. Do you remember the Embassy, the old Embassy Theater on Market Street? Anyway, this is called At the Movies. On Market Street, there was a theater where you could see 4 or 5 movies for $1. And I know Robert Kikuchi and Goho knows what I'm talking about. You could see 4 or 5 movies for $1. Nancy too. Now, they were the same movies that you could catch in the afternoons on the TV during a program called Dialing for Dollars. And during intermission, there'd be a raffle of some kind. My father went to that show when he was a kid, and he'd say that with $0.25, you could do a lot of damage back then. You could see a movie, get a Coke, popcorn, hot dogs, and ice cream, and juju fruits. I saw a few movies with my father, and I got popcorn if I was lucky. And he told me, go get me some bombs. And I went to the counter and asked for bombs. And the woman at the concession stand said, we don't have bombs. We have bonbons. I paid and brought them to my father. And on the screen, the cowboys were shooting the Indians as my father opened the bombs. The woman said they were bonbons, not bombs, I said. My father looked at me as the gunfire rang out across the movie screen. I knew that, he said, gingerly placing a bonbon into his awaiting mouth. We sat through the cowboy movie and the raffle and waited for the war picture to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. So next is Cassandra Rockwood Rice. Got him.
Hello.
Hi, Cassandra.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Shizue, for including me in this reading and for creating such a great platform for all of us writers during this time. It's been really, really nice to participate so far. I'm going to read 3 little pieces. The first is actually about abuse. I am a advocate for ending violence against women-identified people, and at this time there is a sharp increase in the amount of domestic violence cases being reported. And I just want to make sure people keep in their hearts and minds people who are suffering behind closed doors during this time, and reach out to people they know who might be in any kind of abusive quarantine situation. So this poem is actually about the last time that I engaged in an abusive relationship and how I decided to step away. And it's kind of a mythic poem about this mythic person and being caught and stuck with that person. It's called The Last Time I Walked with the Flamethrower. When summer ends, I reflect on the last time I walked with the flamethrower. I knew to stay away by then, my skin scorched and keloid in the places where embers had lodged. He said he was out of lighter fluid this time. He said sorry. He knew how hard the infernos had been on me. It was a long winter. I told him how I barely moved until spring. Even then, my lungs smoke-filled at the thought of leaving. But how easily I forget the way he vanished in the monsoon, how he would not come if there was even a chance of rain. Of course, when they told me to invite my angels in, that's when I called. That's when hunting season began. That's when I learned about 2 kinds of light determined by the distance in between. He told me there'd be berries in the deep, arid woods. Parched, my mouth watered, and I felt like a desperate creature. The entire woods will be full of berries, he said. Let's go. His lips were brightly crimson stained, mouth incandescent within. We went into the tinder, kindling cracking beneath our feet. It won't be long now, he motioned. Come, berries will burst between your teeth. Black raspberries so tart and plump, they drip when you touch them. See my mouth, he said, and as he turned toward me, I could see his tongue, a match lit to consume everything. All right, and then my second poem is about hanging on in the hardest of times, and it was recently included in the Shelter in Poems from Fresno State's MFA program. It's called What to Look For. After winter, we would walk on the spongy fields of our childhood in snow boots, water coming up murky around blue soles. You'd pull a jackknife from your shirt pocket and shave the bark, shallow then deep, revealing a chartreuse layer against strident grays. The tart pepper of life scent would rise to my nose. You'd say, we're at that stage where we can handle a damp green wound. Remember, leaves will furl open in spring, and I should know this by now. As you spoke, I'd take a willowy branch and ring it in opposing circles until the shiny skin peeled up, pulp fracturing outward like a paper lantern, sap coruscating brightly within. This is how we would have prepared to always be holding on a bit longer, awaiting the life that has yet to come forth. And then finally, I wrote this poem to your prompt, Shizue. You had asked me to write something about my heritage and resilience. And so I wrote this shortly after you asked me to. It's called Under the Pink Moon. Bees surround her face now, drink nectar from beads of sweat on her crown. We rest our heads one by one on her chest without observation. Amulet of citrus in April, thistle and honeydew in June. Her scrawl is found on the cedar trees, leaves of juniper, crystalline etchings, and natural sugar. Violent winds rouse red earth as she hurls herself in rivers of vermilion hues. And so we have grape leaves to wrap the rice in, tobacco for the water pipe, wheat fields spanning feral as her hair. Voiceless Jezebel looks on with olivine eyes, over to the once blue seas where man had sailed and returned to scorn her gifts as lies, feed her to dogs and demon kings, because when a woman held power, her command was, above all, worship nature. And he decided this was the worst possible sin. But we hear her tonight as cars go still on every curb, covered with a blanket of pollen and seed pods. The churches are empty now, darlings. Towering buildings go vacant and dim. Across a month without a sour haze that hides the stars, we can hear her on these evenings so free that the moon once again listens to the night bird's songs and lone sounds rising, like the deserted oud player, the lost daughter of Mount Lebanon. She strums and sings, will not forget, shukran, shukran, shukran. And that means thank you in Arabic. So thank you very much for including me, and thank you everyone for your beautiful words. I feel really inspired and moved by every one of these pieces, and keep hanging on, staying safe and strong.
Thank you, Cassandra. And let's see, am I? Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge that Cassandra is the founder of Eves at the Beat, and I was actually supposed to curate on April 4th, which is not long ago. It's only a month ago. Anyway, I didn't want to ask the readers to participate because people were still grappling with a lot of changes, and Cassandra had actually had to drive down to the university at Long Beach to pick up her daughter and a friend, pack them in them and their belongings in a car and drive home in the rain for 10 hours.
Yes, that's true. But oh, if I could add a little plug, we are going to be having a virtual Eves at the Beat event this coming Thursday. So I can add the link to that in our chat. It is curated by Ruth Krosman. It is emceed by Natasha Dennerstein, and we have an amazing lineup of readers: Melissa Jones, Michelle Brooks, Barbara Saunders, Hannah Pesha, Lauren Wheeler, and Vanessa Lewis. So tune into that this Thursday, 7:30.
Okay, great. Thank you. So next will be Dena Rod.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dena Rod. For those of you that don't know me, I am Iranian American and I'm queer. And a lot of my work deals with those intersections. And I was thinking kind of uniquely how the coronavirus is affecting Iran and Iranians, especially with the increased sanctions on Iran. And so that makes it more harder to get PPE for the healthcare workers in the Islamic Republic currently. Like even companies that want to contract with the Islamic government can't due to financial penalties. So they're definitely in need of more of donations and money in that regard. And that's something that's been weighing quite heavy on my mind as we are dealing with our own circumstances as well, but thinking about how this really is a truly global fight. I have some new poems that I'm really excited to share with you. This first one is called Trials. What do we learn from the dead? Our doctors, before they were doctors, crept into graveyards at night, unearthed bodies to dissect and slice into unclaimed flesh, lesson planned by autopsy. Every day, we're learning from our dead. If they're still infectious with rigor mortis, can they share their organs with the living? Walk a test tube, a genotype split with a second strain that couldn't kill alone, but rather intubated complicity down larynx as systems shut down, no reset button to power back on. The sharp prevalence of the question, cause of death, natural or accident? What's the severity of this loss other than a magnitude of learning potential? Is the lesson to never take that lash falling on your cheek, the heat of freshly brewed tea against a sore lip for granted? We can't look in the rearview mirror, leaning into every new day, leaving trails of salt behind us. This next poem is called Extra Extra. Broken and branded delirious, never knowing when I am American. In rapidly changing times of peace, despite what is printed on my passport, I am told, get new bones. Your current ones are made of soft sorrow and diminishing dreams, and only good for carrion. I am Iranian, palms pressed against a glass barrier, prayer left unheard by a robbed rosary, detained with sticky remnants. The sky is just beginning to lighten this morning, and another man asks me where I am from, but he doesn't want to hear from Oakland, with tree tops to make way for power lines, roses and tomatoes growing in December's dry grass. America, a bottomless well of desire. How many skins will I shed so I can fit into new lives? I'm Iranian, crunching against dry leaves, wishing for enough water to fill my mouth, waiting for the mention of what's front page again, our evil accessed again, as he paper bag embracing, steel reserve drinking in his fist, a silver bullet to kill the specter of reality. I love Iran. I hate Bush, he tells me. To him, it's 2005 with mimicked headlines all over again. I am rewound, a pigeon with one toe throwing the middle finger in the air by default, other toes lost to a hair tourniquet. Wiping his mouth, he says goodbye to me by way of God will help Iran, and I wonder how. I am American, passport rebound, like when we were kids, whirring the VHS tape back over plastic wheels because America missed something when they went to the bathroom. Rewind, and then we could watch again and again until understanding dawned on us. Wish I could fast forward, or at least skip a chapter, past the sour taste lingering on my tongue, waiting for blood on sharp teeth-cutting lips, while you, America, still chew on the sides of your nails, moistening that dry cuticle with your saliva, drooling over what comes next. This last poem that I'll leave you with was recently published in Dear Quarantine Diary, which is currently accepting submissions, and I highly recommend that you submit. They're great people. Please don't call it a guzzle. I'm going to slice the smile from all the lying faces that watched blue seep from their legions when this is all over. Rip their wads of cash into fun-sized pieces, throw it in the air like confetti at the New York Stock Exchange when this is all over. Decorate my face with wrath, call it darling, while I sharpen my teeth into points when this is all over. I'm gonna season their flesh with sriracha and garlic, layer it on top of the avocado toast they told me I don't deserve when this is all over. Bite into their cellular walls, fattened with billions, salivating over the fat that's so succulent from years of lies when this is all over. paint the walls of my rent-controlled apartment with their blood, wipe my hands clean with stolen PPE when this is all over. And yes, Donald, I'm going to climb your wall, smash it like Berlin's, and wave your head smiling blood when this is all over. My name is Dana Rod. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Dana. Next is Norma Smith.
Thank you all so much. It's been wonderful. So this is from a few weeks ago, early spring 2020, East Bay Hills, where I go for comfort whenever there's a catastrophe. Deer come back, quail come back, wild turkey descend. Newts, for whom the rangers had already set time and space aside for you to court, have it all to yourselves. I can see you from behind this thin fence of miner's lettuce in the shade, indulge in your amphibious orgies. We know that some humans suffer what we call a baby boom 9 months after disasters blanket us, cushion us, when our desire becomes too much for us. Canada geese, settle in. Neighbors, we know your government is making ready for the refugees. That's us this time, yes, from the South. They are wise to isolate us. I hear dolphins and swans re-inhabit the medieval inlets and waterways of Venice, now that the people have diminished one another once again, enough that there might be past our recollection, past our naming, past our calling, peace on earth as there once was. Hear that scurrying. Garden snakes return. Wild nettle was always there. What can we do without unearthing everything? For now, grounded. And this one happened without a title, but she's away, thank you. The title is Stand. The air is clear once the machines shut down. The water welcomes back shy beasts that choked for so long on our garbage. We wade at a distance from each other, out to the mile mark and every other man-made measure. What were we searching for? The far-ranging telescope, our plan for the sacred mountain. We are put off by the guardians, after all. You might bury us in this fire of stars, dust to dust. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Next is Kimi Sugioka.
Thank you, Shizue. This is a really important reading that you've organized. I am a teacher also. I am a special education teacher, elementary. So I have one poem about that and one that's a spell I would like to cast. So this is called Distant Teaching. I have been instructed to teach over the internet. 5 to 10-year-olds with challenges, such as autism, ADHD, learning disability, cognitive impairment, emotional fragility, food insecurity. I have no books, no specialized programs. My assistant doesn't have internet. Some parents don't have email or don't respond or speak another language. Some of the teachers don't want me to join their classrooms for meetings, even though that is how I can see what they are assigning to my students. I will hold virtual office hours. I will try to help my students feel seen. I will pretend to teach. And this is called Thank You. Incantation. Let the moon interrupt the sun till tides cleanse this empire of sons and fathers whose fortunes rest on the skulls and bones of the ravaged, conquered, and murdered. Let fire ebb from coals of rain, loose the fragrance of cedar and sage to bear the seam of morning to the hem of night, to ignite the breath of ancestors who earned and won continuance. Cover your face with earth, twine life with death, that one remembers the other in all acts and intentions, bloody the axe to exact humility from hubris. Wake the kestrel and the dove, that they may liberate all our wailing souls from this crown of thorns. Let the moon interrupt the sun's momentum till the tides cleanse this siege of hate. Flex the muscle of love and tend to the wounds of the world. Thanks a lot.
Hey folks, I'm Kelechi Ubozo. Thank you for staying till the last set of readers. It's really means a lot. I'm going to be reading one piece. It's called Unhealed Wounds. Time is an unusual luxury, now afforded to most. The old wounds are returning. Have you noticed? We have a choice. We can rebury them and shatter foundations, or heal them and harness this toward equilibrium and peace. We are forging a new world collectively. This is something no one knows, that 5 years ago, he brought me to Ocean Beach to witness his death. I struggled to drag him out of the cold Pacific. Furious and confused, he had proposed just 3 days earlier. Everything looked so good on the outside. I guess like most people, we only posted joy on Facebook, hid everything dark and scary behind the scenes. The end of the engagement happened 6 months later, followed by my attendance of 7 weddings. I buried the sadness and built a wall around my heart. Don't let anyone get too close. Don't live with anyone and provide for yourself. You cannot trust anyone to take care of you but you. I did pretty well, all things considered. I built a mental health empire, worked in suicide prevention, which was ironic, spoke openly about my struggles, hoping to change someone's life, anyone's life. I got a good job with benefits, a large salary, security. I made it to the top. Meanwhile, my heart reopened and I fell for someone who I could build a home with, but was very wary about getting too close. It all looked good on paper. It wasn't. A voice said, leave and hurry. I didn't fight against it, but fear crept up on me. Leave security with no safety blanket? My partner smiled and held my hand, his concern for me a mirror that outweighed everything else. Well, isn't this what I'm always talking about? Mental health. No, not bubble baths. I'm talking about boundaries, removing toxic people from your life, asking for what you deserve, calling out racism, and ignoring white fragility, ending that never-ending code switching. I was so exhausted. My last week of work was the first week of shelter in place. I drove into my office in Sacramento to pack up all my stuff. My goodbye party was canceled. James asked me, if this all goes south, do you want to quarantine together? Be vulnerable 24/7? But I wouldn't be made up. I wouldn't be perfect. I couldn't run away. Well, the answer was still yes. The wall to protect me from him was also leaving me out on so much more. So I let him in to my house and my space. Meanwhile, my job asked if I really wanted to leave, knowing that it would be so hard for me to find something and at least I had security. I knew it was a trap. I left with no clear plan but me. It is an interesting time to be bold, but if I trusted the inner knowing that it was time to go, I had to listen. So I left. It's not for everyone to understand. The drive back to get to Oakland before midnight was tense, as if some mythical furies were chasing me home. We came together and made a new space in life. It oddly fit, but we had been laying the groundwork for a home for years. Time is an interesting thing. I didn't know what to do with it. I quickly poured myself into other projects because I believed, like white supremacy had taught me, that my productivity was tied to my worth. Those are lies. Meanwhile, the oldest wounds resurfaced, gifts to finally feel. 18-year wounds, memories flooding. Finally, I had the space to feel that was me, because he was touching about me being thin enough, pretty enough, or just enough. It wasn't about me. The best friend who showed up for all the hard times but disappeared when I got healthier. I think about her often because you don't expect a friendship to end, much less someone to leave with no reasons, no trace or words. And finally, one morning, 5 a.m., I returned to the beach, the beginning of the end, to confront my ex-fiance's ghost. I didn't miss him or the smell of his depression. He loved me the best he could with a hole in his soul. I needed to watch the sunrise over our old life. But when I arrived, the ocean said, "We washed that away a long time ago. It's your turn. There's only peace here. There's only beauty here." And I watched the Foss mist at the edge of the world. It said release. And so I did. Thank you, guys. I don't know why I clapped for myself. That was weird.
Thank you so much. And do you want to hold up your book?
So this is my book, which Shiz is in. We've been two patients, Voices for Radical Mental Health. If you're interested, I just bought a bunch of copies so you could get them straight from me. It's another anthology, but you could also get it on Amazon. Thank you so much for being here and for staying here. Y'all are amazing. And thank you, Shiz. Seriously, you're amazing.
Thanks. Okay, so there are three readers left, Sandra Wasili, Malcolm Williams, and Andre Wilson. And don't go away because they're all fantastic.
Well, thank you, Shizwe, for encouraging me to write during this time, because it's been very hard to write. I've been caregiving, taking care of a building, a site manager. But I did write a couple of poems. I'm going to read one of those, and I am going to read a very short poem at the end that is kind of like a prayer. This one I'm entitled, I just finished it today. It's very dangerous reading a new poem, but I'm going to do it. It's called The Irony of History Right Now. My grandson speaks over the phone from Alaska on measuring how tall he is and comments on his impending 8th birthday. I'm growing old fast. I think about how the pandemic is shaping him, his growing in body and in spirit, what he must have endured when his mother slept all day, ill after exposure at the school where she served meals to students in the elementary, then the high school. The latter a boarding school, a remnant of the days of children torn from their families and villages to get schooled in the ways of civilization. But my grandson today cannot go to school or visit his cousin, a short run across the stream through a stand of birches, the snow melting now. The irony of history. Children once gathered to save them, now dispersed to homes where they are presumed sheltered. How this virus pandemic is shaping his generation recalls some differences for those who lived through the influenza 100 years ago. That one slayed families and destroyed villages that left no one to bury the rotting bodies. Survivors did not know how to grieve, what to blame, or who to forgive for the sudden shift in the axis of their lives that left them lost. But my grandson and his cousin, like children across the world, are growing old fast. in houses, shacks, apartments, side by side. They are communing by digital devices through games, lessons, news, how their elders are handling all this pandemonium. These boys are discovering an open field of talent and character where they assume responsibility, one taking on household chores, and the other producing a Facebook series on science experiments. He says, kids teaching kids. Between these digital moments across the known world, in isolation with families newly configured to one spot, our young children must be thrown against their own thoughts and consider who is vulnerable, who is in charge. I see signs. They are fostering respect of personal space and of self-reliance. I feel I am witnessing a shift in measure of what is valuable, a turn in the page of our collective history, a blessing. Thank you. And then this last one, actually I wrote some time ago after Fukushima. It's called Earth at Night from the Space Station. Beneath webbed wing, through 1,000 eyes, Earth breaches, her skin fire-lit, liquid, silver hit by, by lightning, line dancing under cloud-flecked froth. Each dawn a flash swallowed, 1,000 dissolves in the green splash. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And Sandra has a book coming out in the fall from Cirque Press, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so Malcolm.
I just want to say I'm really honored and humbled to be included as a reader alongside so many powerful voices. Yeah, you all are really inspirational. I have 2 poems to read, both kind of just processing this whole adjustment. So the first one is a metaphor for time spent sheltering. Have you ever been to the beach with water polo players? I wouldn't recommend it unless you're a water polo player. If you're like me, you'll usually let them go in favor of ample air. But if you're feeling more confident one summer day in 2016, then you'll start swimming like you're trying out for the team. You might go past where you can stand and resist fleeing. Seems great. You kind of see why people like the beach. That is, until you see you're stuck in place. Not for lack of paddling. In fact, your arms swinging only seem to further cement your place in the beach's walk of shame. Caught in a riptide. At least now you're California bona fide. After the panic, your limbs slow and you feel the water is gentle. Not exactly gripping and twisting, more like halting and sternly settled. Now that you're stuck, you actually have time to catch up on thoughts as unfinished and waitlisted as movies and shows with plots that suddenly sound more real than the official coos and caws wafting easterly to your ears. Clearly it's for the birds. But nearly everyone in OC has shown up to cough and scoff along peers at peers who appear to seriously fear the danger here. But you, half-dressed and isolated, can't stop the cheers. You feel their jeers, but can't be elsewhere to wipe away tears. As the tide ticks on, you start to fear an impending vote to swim left towards the shore or right into ocean in boats will continue to encroach out of your control. For now, you can float among the ups and downs as an attempt to cope. That was the first one, and I'm trying to pull up the second one, sorry. So the second one is titled Alone Together. It's supposed to be kind of inspired by a hashtag I saw early on. Alone together, creeping over the curb, a post-work crowd boarding on cruise control, cramped and packed but correlated to the cell. Messenger MTA moving through the city, painted red like blood cells moving in a hurry, pumping past people in a semi-salient flurry. crushed cans and stuffed bags softly jostling, conversations competing with creaks crinkling and rustling, beeps and bumps and muffled pardoning, a quiet shuffling, sending clots bustling. Alone, in the space between phone screens, together. Out of the bus and into the fire, into a couple who steps to each other, inching towards fists, measured by crowd shouts, hands fling up, fingers poke out, flames licking at the ends of faces. I stand between these sparks and kids across the street, their screams feeding like kindling. I stare in fear, like I'm not from here. Grieflessly, they share the scene via phone screens. Sparkles shoot out and bounce off smiles. They gleam with indifference. I glean what's cause for complacence, a learned case of cynicisms. Leaving this melting powder pot like the rest, happy even, for rest. Alone, walking by what's wrong, and wrong for walking by, together. Shuttered and sheltered at home, buses slowed, jobs furloughed, and crowds postponed, hashtags posted to check boxes with X's and O's back and forth until it's called cat scratch, and we're back to tracking tasks to justify, striking through C's and S's to glorify signing checks to the wealthiest. If I feel boxed and locked in a grid, imagine all the people without basics. But back to scrolling. Like people aren't dying, like people aren't living, haven't been living, crowded and without essentials, before we were alone, searching for some hope that will really come together. Thanks.
Thank you, Malcolm. And Malcolm also teaches middle school in San Francisco, public middle school. So, thanks very much. Andre Wilson.
Well, thank you very much, Cedric, for organizing this, and thank you all who participated this afternoon. It's been a full, empowering event. Thank you very much. This essay is titled Cicada. Like a cicada, every years, my mother emerged from the San Fernando Valley to work the census in Los Angeles. Her green embossed diary announced on April 11th, 1980, got called to go to training as census worker. A week later, she added, "Thank you, Father. I'm beginning to understand the census business more." 14 years old and reading movie tie-in books because I couldn't afford movies, I recall fragmentary memories of my census work. I'm uncertain which census belonged to 1980 or 1990, but I remember Mom being busy during the day, driving all over Los Angeles to survey people. She even boasted about visiting Skid Row and parks. I blinked. People live in parks? You gotta go where the people are, she said. I feared for my mother, a single Black woman going alone to such places. Either I said, "Why do you do it?" or my expression did because she said, "I have to count all the people." In those moments, she spoke about her work. She radiated energy. She determined to count all of the hard-to-count people, the poor, the immigrant, the unhoused. As a woman who relied on public services for housing, healthcare, and employment for herself and her children, she knew that if the census undercounted people of color, it could impact her family. This motivated her to count as many of the hard-to-count people as possible. When she came home, she hummed in the kitchen because her work energized instead of wearied her. My mom, superwoman. 9 years later, on September 19th, 1989, Mom had a dream. She wrote in her Black diary, "Dreamed of asking census where everybody lived, and they said not yet." Even if she knew where to find hard-to-count people, she couldn't conduct the census a year early. 7 months later, on April 20, 1990, she wrote, "I got a call from the Census Bureau about a job as supervisor." Later resumes listed as work experience, supervisor, Department of Commerce, U.S. Bureau of Census. Papers inundated our apartment, maps, addresses, questionnaires, all with the word census printed on them. I cleaned, raised a sheet of paper to a wastebasket and asked, "Can I throw this away?" "No," she said, "that belongs to the United States Census." I rolled my eyes. "Well, what's it doing here?" I laid the sheet on the pile. My mother trained an army of census takers and sent them into the field. They couldn't go to a place. She went. While I never accompanied her, I imagined her armed with a heavy bag of census sheets, walking into the nether reaches of the city to prove that everybody counts. I don't know if she worked the 2000 or the 2010 census because I moved in '93. She died in 2012. Easy! My partner of several decades exited our home office in an East Bay condo, beaming at me in the kitchen after completing our 2020 census online. Relief that done, sadness. Algorithms had to replace my mother. She used to go person to person to help people complete the census. Now, the coronavirus pandemic raged throughout the country, making it dangerous for new generations of census takers to survey people's community. The Census Bureau encouraged everyone to complete the census by phone, email, or online. But I feel a growing dread that, like the virus, an undercount will disproportionately impact people of color. To paraphrase something Mom used to say, if you don't do the census, you didn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. So that was all the readers. This was an amazing meeting. My original plan had been if a bunch of people showed up that we didn't know, because, you know, we're all reading to people and we don't necessarily find out who they are. So that's what I wanted to know. Who are they? And are they all like poets and writers themselves, or are there other people besides writers that are interested in what we're doing? I was curious about that. But then the other thing about me is that I have a personal pull towards real stories by real people. And yeah, and there are other things besides that. But I think that the rest of us all know each other. Kathleen, you could probably introduce yourself.
Hi, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Oh, hi, I'm sorry. I'm Kathleen. Around 2013, I met Chisway. I took a class with her in Maluka from a woman at the writing salon. And that's how I am tangentially involved. And I've been to Endangered Species, and also, and that was the only one, the book signing, I went to that. So I like memoir and poetry. But I find myself busy with everything but what I want to do.
Thanks for hanging in here this whole time. Thank you very much. And thank you, Nicole. So anyway, I'll catch you guys later.
Okay. Take
Thanks
care.
very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, bye-bye.